Chapter 3570. For the Blood Prison Marshal to become the right-hand man of the god of the underworld, he was by no means an ordinary person. He could guess that Yuan Ji was possessed and that there was another story behind the theft of the divine pearl. Ji Tianxing was not surprised. But Ji Tianxing could not figure out why the Blood Prison Marshal concluded that it was him and not the experts of the Reincarnation Island or the Sea Race. Apart from the top experts of the Boundless Heaven continent, no one knew about his rebirth. The Blood Prison Marshal was not in a hurry to explain. He chuckled and said, "At that time, I only wanted to investigate the theft of the divine pearl. I must find the real culprit and retrieve the creation divine pearl. But half a month ago, there was an abnormality at the entrance of the abyss of reincarnation. When I received the news, I analyzed it a little and guessed that the two things were related. It must be the same person. Moreover, I also want to see who exactly this audacious fellow is. What did he want to do by taking such a huge risk to sneak into the abyss of reincarnation? So, I have been paying attention to the movements of the abyss of reincarnation and instructed Tianzhan and the seven fiends not to alert the enemy and pretend not to know. The two of them cooperated with me to wait for you to make a move and then give you a fatal blow. However, while we were waiting, a small episode happened. At this point, the Blood Prison Marshal took out a communication jade slip and waved it at Ji Tianxing. He said, "You can't imagine that the Boundless Heaven Continent's Inspector Commander Qi Yin and Deputy Commander Jin Shuang have kept in touch with me. If there is nothing on a normal day, we cannot contact each other for hundreds of years. But if there is something important, we will tell each other and remind each other. After you were reborn, Jin Shuang told me what you did in the Boundless Heaven Continent. Also, Jin Shuang reminded me that after you escaped from the Boundless Heaven Continent, you fled all the way south toward the Reincarnation Island." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing came to a realization. He sneered with a gloomy face. "So that's how it is." The Blood Prison Marshal put away the communication jade slip and continued. "Kenshin has fallen for 1,000 years, but he has been reborn and is about to recover the strength of a peak divine king. This news is really shocking. Even for me, it took me an entire day to recover my strength. This seat calculated the time. You escaped from the Boundless Heaven continent for 2 to 3 months. You should have arrived at the Reincarnation Island. Coupled with the theft of the divine orb and the abnormality of the entrance to the abyss, I naturally suspected you." After the Bloodhelm Marshal finished his explanation, a smug smile appeared on his face. Ji Tianxing nodded and said expressionlessly, "It's reasonable and everything is logical." "Very good. Blood Prison, you're much smarter than before. You're no longer a brute who only knows how to kill and fight. Lord Kenshin, you flatter me." Blood Prison Marshal's smile was still the same as before. He said modestly, "Actually, I have to thank Jin Shuang for this. If he didn't send a message to remind me, how would I know about this?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a cold voice, "That's right. The key problem lies with Jin Shuang. When I return to the Boundless Heaven continent in the future, I will definitely sacrifice him to my sword." "Ha ha!" Marshal Bloodhell raised his head and laughed. He shook his head and said, "As expected of the Kenshin, you are still so confident even in the face of death. Do you think you can survive today? Do you still have a chance to return to the Boundless Heaven continent?" Heavenly War Divine General, Seven Fiend Divine General, and many Divine Kings all revealed mocking sneers and mocked him. TSK. This is the legendary Kenshin? Other than boasting, he doesn't seem to be anything special. I understand. If you want to become a famous powerhouse, you have to learn how to boast. No matter what, even if you are about to die, you can't be a coward. You have to boast to the end. Kenshin, if you were at your peak back then, you would indeed be able to escape today. But now that you are so weak, you should quickly admit defeat and surrender. Yes, with your great reputation as Kenshin, as long as you surrender, the Grand Marshal will definitely spare your life. Everyone's mocking words and contemptuous expressions caused Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Chao Qingyu, and the others to reveal angry expressions. Ji Tianxing was not angry. He ignored those divine kings and only stared at the blood hell marshal. He sneered and said, "Whether I can survive or not. How will I know if I have a chance if I don't try?" "Very good. You have ambition." The blood hell marshal grinned coldly and said, full of confidence, "This seat's patience is exhausted. I'm going to wring your head off right now. But I wonder how many punches you can withstand from this seat." Ji Tianxing said with a cold smile, "The defeated general back then, a stray dog. Your guts have grown fat now, to dare strut around in front of this seat." Hearing this sentence, Heavenly War and the seven fiends were both stunned for a moment, a hint of shame and anger flashing across their eyes. But those divine kings were full of doubts, not understanding the meaning. Only the divine kings who participated in that great battle 1,000 years ago knew how powerful and domineering Kenshin was back then. 5 great peak divine kings besieged him, and he could still maintain his undefeated state, fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. During this period, the Blood Helm Marshal, Commander Styx, and War God Profound Nether were eager to make contributions, so they took the opportunity to sneak attack Kenshin. In the end, while Kenshin blocked the 5 great peak divine kings, he even counterkilled War God Profound Nether and severely injured the Blood Helm Marshal and Commander Styx. Especially the Blood Helm Marshal, Heavenly War, and the 7 fiends, their limbs were easily chopped off by Kenshin with a few slashes, and they fled miserably, losing all face in front of the deities. As for that unlucky War God Profound Nether, he was the blood brother of the god of the underworld. If he could live until now, his status and power would far surpass the Blood Helm Marshal and Commander Styx. Having Ji Tianxing poked at his sore spot, the Blood Helm Marshal shouted angrily, "Do you think you're still the Kenshin from back then? Since you're so arrogant, then this seat wants to see if you can still be so unyielding when you admit defeat and beg for mercy later." Finished talking, the Blood Helm Marshal did not waste any more time, brandishing both fists and punching viciously at Ji Tianxing and the rest. Sky Tyrant Divine Fist. The Blood Helm Marshal was different from ordinary divine kings. He never used weapons like sabers, spears, swords, halberds, or other divine weapons. His intrinsic weapon was a pair of supreme-grade, king-grade brass knuckles, which had long fused with his hands. Therefore, every move he made had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was true that a single punch could shatter the void, and even shatter the stars would not be a problem. As he shouted coldly, a pair of dark golden fists as large as mountains descended from the sky towards everyone. Before the fists even arrived, Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao, and the rest were suppressed by an invisible divine power. It was as if all of them were stuck in a quagmire, unable to move an inch. This battle was the most difficult and dangerous battle they had ever fought in their lives. And the Blood Helm Marshal was also the strongest enemy they had ever faced. Under the Sky Tyrant Divine Fist, it was very likely that everyone would be crushed and die on the spot. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing's expression was solemn. He swung the Burial of Heaven with all his might, slashing out a giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth. Space-Time Blade. This giant sword did not slash at the Sky Tyrant Divine Fist. Instead, it slashed at the space above the altar. Boom! Before the Sky Tyrant Divine Fist descended, the giant sword slashed through space, ruthlessly tearing open a spatial rift that was hundreds of miles long. Chapter 3571. Within the 400-mile-long spatial rift was a pitch-black void. This spatial rift was like a chasm, blocking the sky-dominating Divine Fist and Ji Tianxing's group. The two sides of the chasm seemed to be only tens of thousands of feet apart, but in reality, there were countless layers of space between the two, as if they were 2 different worlds. Boom! The next moment, the mountain-like sky-dominating Divine Fist smashed into the pitch-black spatial rift, producing a deafening explosion. The void was shattered into pieces, chaotic and turbulent. However, the sky-dominating Divine Fist also shattered, quickly disappearing into the void. The Blood Helm Marshal's punch did not threaten Ji Tianxing's group at all, as it was completely blocked by the spatial rift. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were shocked for nothing and secretly rejoiced. Tianzhan, the seven fiends, and many other godly kings were dumbfounded and could not help but exclaim, "Damn it, he's actually so cunning? This guy is too sinister." He actually didn't fight the Grand Marshal head-on, but used a secret technique to shift the target. From the looks of it now, this guy might not be very strong, but he's full of schemes and tricks. So a battle between experts can be played like this? I've learned something new. In the future, I'll also practice spatial abilities. To many godly kings, being able to watch the battle between the Bloodhelm Marshal and Kenshin with their own eyes was a feast for their eyes, and they could also learn a lot of battle experience. After all, these two were experts who stood at the peak of the divine path. Their cultivation and battle experience were unimaginably rich. When Ji Tianxing slashed out with the space-time blade, he already had a card up his sleeve and predicted the outcome. He did not need to look to know that the sky-dominating divine fist would definitely be neutralized by the spatial rift. Therefore, he seized every second to cast a spell to break the array, shooting out hundreds of divine lights and injecting them into the altar. Another patch of the formation patterns and patterns on the 8 stone pillars lit up. Seeing this scene, Tianzhan, the seven fiends, and the other godly kings all looked furious as they cursed. "Bastard! That guy is stalling for time. He's still casting a spell to activate the altar. Hurry and stop him. We can't let the Grand Marshal fight alone. Everyone, let's attack together." As they called out, Tianzhan, the seven evils, and the various god kings all struck out. They used various abilities and skills towards Ji Tianxing and the others. However, the overwhelming torrent of divine light and all kinds of powerful divine skills were blocked by the void crack. Only a loud rumbling sound could be heard as the void crack was blasted into chaos. However, Ji Tianxing and the others were safe and sound. The spatial rift had become their barrier, which was more effective than any defensive ability. Not to mention these middle and high-level god kings. Even a 9th stage realm god king, like the Blood Prison Marshal, couldn't do anything to Su Kong. Even though he could shatter the void, he couldn't penetrate it, let alone change it. Only the will of the heavenly Tao could dominate the rules of the void. Even if Ji Tianxing had used the space-time blade to open up that spatial rift, the will of the Great Way would have repaired it. Everyone saw with their own eyes that the 800 miles long and 10,000 feet wide spatial rift was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. After it completely healed, Ji Tianxing and the others would lose their protection. However, the Blood Prison Marshal and the various god kings couldn't wait until then. For the spatial rift to completely heal, it would take at least 100 breaths of time. By then, Ji Tianxing would probably have finished casting the spell and successfully activated the altar. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was still casting the spell, shooting out dazzling divine light continuously, injecting it into the altar. The two god generals and the various god kings were so anxious that their hearts burned with worry, but there was nothing they could do. Suddenly, a god king suggested agitatedly, "That spatial rift is between us and Kenshin. No one could do anything about it, but we can change the direction of our attack. Let's not stay in the sky. Let's all descend to the ground or burrow into the ground. Then we won't be obstructed by the spatial rift." The moment he said that, the other god kings' eyes lit up and they all tried it. "You're really a goddamn genius. That's a good idea. We can give it a try. Although it sounds a little strange, it seems feasible." As they spoke, Tianzhan, the seven malice god generals, and the various god kings all descended to the ground. They were on the same level as Ji Tianxing and the others. Once again, they worked together to cast their ultimate skills and launched an attack. This method was indeed feasible. Countless blades of divine light, frost, and fire blasted toward Ji Tianxing and the others, but they were not blocked by the spatial rift. However, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others blocked at the same time, casting their spells to form a huge shield. Boom, boom, boom. The various god kings' ultimate skills all blasted the shield, creating a loud explosion. However, they were unable to harm Ji Tianxing and the others. Seeing this, the Blood Prison Marshal also changed the direction of his attack. He waved his fists and sent out tens of thousands of fist auras. Meteor shower. Tens of thousands of blood-red fist auras rained down like meteors. They all went around the spatial rift and blasted toward Ji Tianxing and the others from all directions. Every fist aura was terrifyingly powerful. When tens of thousands of fist auras blasted out at the same time, it was enough to flatten everything within 100,000 miles. Bam! 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 The shield of Ji Tianxing and the others only lasted for a few seconds before it was blasted to smithereens by the blood-red fist auras. Immediately after, he used the Sword of Armageddon and slashed out a giant golden sword that was tens of thousands of feet long. Only then did he manage to defeat the fist auras that filled the sky. Just as the Blood Prison Marshal's attack was neutralized, the two god generals and the many god kings joined forces to attack again. The sky was filled with god techniques. They shot out like a rain of arrows, enveloping Ji Tianxing and the others. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng, and the others all tried their best to defend and block. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to use the 10 directional vanishing shadows to create 4 clones. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, 4 clones of him appeared on the battlefield. Their appearances and auras were exactly the same. It was difficult to tell which one was the real one. He and the 3 clones swung their swords at the same time and slashed out sword auras that filled the sky to block the attacks of the God Kings. Boom, boom, boom. Following a thunderous boom, the attacks of the 2 god generals and the many god kings were blocked again. However, Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others also paid a heavy price. Other than Bai Feng, who was only slightly injured, the others were severely injured and covered in blood. Especially Yank. He was too big and too obvious a target, so he was beaten the most miserably. His body was a bloody mess. Everyone's injuries were too severe, and their strength was rapidly weakening. If they continued to resist, their divine bodies might be destroyed, and they might even die on the spot. Ji Tianxing decisively took out the Zhouqian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and put Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others into the pagoda. Other than Bai Feng, who was placed on the 3rd level of the pagoda, the others entered the distorted space-time to recuperate. Only Ji Tianxing and his 3 clones were left on the battlefield. They stubbornly resisted the attacks of the God Kings. The 3 clones unleashed all kinds of ultimate techniques and fought against the God Kings. Meanwhile, his main body took the opportunity to continue activating the space-time altar. 90% of the runes and diagrams on the 8 stone pillars have been activated. Only a small portion was left. Chapter 3572. Time passed. The spatial rift in the sky had mostly healed. As for Ji Tianxing and his 3 clones, they had been entangled with the godly monarchs for a long time. They took the opportunity to activate the altar. From the looks of it, he was not far from success. When all the runes and diagrams on the 8 stone pillars lit up, the space-time passage would appear. The 2 divine generals and the godly monarchs were filled with anxiety. Their hearts burned with worry as sweat dripped down their foreheads. Stop him. The guy who cast the spell to open the altar is his real body. The others are all clones. Don't get the wrong target. Don't focus on his clones. Heavens, not only can his true body cast spells, even his clones can cast spells. Damn it, ignore his clones. As long as we kill his true body, those clones will naturally dissipate. The 2 divine generals constantly shouted as they directed the godly monarchs to surround and attack Ji Tianxing. The Blood Prison Marshal did not speak. His expression was gloomy as he constantly used divine abilities and ultimate skills to attack Ji Tianxing from different directions. Ordinary godly monarchs could not distinguish between Ji Tianxing's true body and his true body, but he was well aware and could see it clearly. Ji Tianxing's 3 clones only had half the strength of his true body. Even though the Blood Prison Marshal attacked fiercely, for dozens of times and successfully injured Ji Tianxing. 10 breaths later, he destroyed one of Ji Tianxing's clones with a punch. But Ji Tianxing was covered in blood and his hair was disheveled. No matter how wretched he looked, he was still casting spells to activate the altar. Unless the blood prison marshal could kill him, there was no way to stop him. However, Ji Tianxing was waiting under the space-time altar. In front of him was the altar, and around him were the 8 stone pillars. Even though the blood prison marshal had world-destroying methods and divine abilities, he did not dare to use them easily. Once he used his ultimate killer move to kill Ji Tianxing, it would also destroy everything within 100,000 miles. Not only would the reef island completely fall, the space-time altar would also be destroyed. At that time, the space-time altar would be destroyed and the space-time passage would naturally appear. In that case, the gains would not make up for the losses, and it would cause incalculable losses. Therefore, the Bloodhelm Marshal had some misgivings and was unable to use his full strength. Seeing the array runes and diagrams on the 8 stone pillars light up, Marshal Bloodhelm panicked. Without any hesitation, he unleashed all of his strength and punched out 2 heaven-shattering fists towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's main body hurriedly dodged, but the Bloodhelm Marshal had locked onto his soul aura, making it impossible for him to dodge. He was already heavily injured and in a very sorry state. If he was struck by the heaven-crushing fist again, even if he didn't die, his divine body would be destroyed. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to enter the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda to temporarily avoid danger. Boom! 2 heaven-crushing fists the size of mountains slammed into the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. But what surprised everyone was that the divine pagoda had shrunk to the size of a speck of dust and was hiding under the altar. When the heaven-crushing fist struck the divine tower, it also struck the altar. The entire altar shook violently and flashed with 5-color divine light. Its foundation was clearly unstable, and a few cracks even appeared. As for the dust-like divine tower, it was completely undamaged and only flickered with a faint black light. Seeing this, Marshal Bloodhelm's handsome face turned ashen as he gnashed his teeth in hatred. He had already been very cautious and had restrained the power of the heaven-crushing fist. His control of divine power was very exquisite. He could make the heaven-crushing fist power hit the target without affecting other places. But he never expected that Ji Tianxing would not dodge or block and actually enter a divine artifact. Moreover, the black divine tower was indestructible. Not only did it block his attack, but it had also shrunk to the size of a speck of dust. This was too despicable. A supreme-grade, king-grade divine artifact? The Bloodhelm Marshal frowned as he stared at the divine tower and observed it carefully. At this moment, Ji Tianxing left the divine tower and continued to inject divine light into the altar. Tianzhan, the 7 fiends, and the many god kings also hated Ji Tianxing to the core. They all charged over without any regard for their own safety. Ji Tianxing's 2 clones had already been killed by the Bloodhelm Marshal. He was alone. Not only did he have to cast spells, but he also had to block everyone's attacks. Seeing the 2 god generals and 20 god kings charging over again, he frowned as a cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Sword of Annihilation. He used this divine ability for the 3rd time and drew on the boundless power of the world to slash out a giant sword. Bam! 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 The giant sword swept out, erupting with a power that could destroy the world. The sky full of divine technique lights were all destroyed on the spot and swept away. The giant sword's power did not weaken much as it struck Tianzhan, the 7 fiends, and the many god kings. With a great sound, the god kings all cried out miserably as they were all sent flying. 5 mid-level god kings were cut in half on the spot, their divine bodies destroyed. There were also 7 god kings who were heavily injured and covered in blood as they fell into the ruins. Even Tianzhan and the 7 fiends were forced back by his sword. They broke out in cold sweat from fright. Only then did they realize that Kenshin was still Kenshin. Even if his cultivation realm had fallen, he was still not someone they could match. The only one who was qualified to be Kenshin's opponent and could injure him was the Blood Hell Marshal. Bam! Ji Tianxing had just repelled the two god generals and the many god kings when he was struck by the Blood Hell Marshal's fist. He was sent flying. While he was still in midair, blood spurted out of his mouth and nose. More than a dozen bones on his back shattered, forming a large crater as golden divine blood gushed out. Dozens of the golden dragon scales that covered his body were also shattered. No matter how strong his defense was, he could not block the Blood Hell Marshal's fist. However, it was as if he could not feel any pain. He did not even scream as he flew back to the altar and continued casting spells. Die! The Blood Hell Marshal roared in anger as he punched at Ji Tianxing again. At this moment, the void rift in the sky had already healed and returned to its original state. The Blood Hell Marshal's fist was about to hit Ji Tianxing. His injuries were too severe, and his strength had dropped greatly. If he was hit by the fist, he would definitely be smashed to pieces. At the critical moment, he could only use the Armillary Heaven Secret technique to merge with the world within a radius of 200,000 miles. Boom! Ji Tianxing's figure instantly disappeared. The mountain-like fist immediately struck the space-time altar. With an earth-shattering explosion, two huge cracks appeared on the 1,000-foot-tall altar, extending from the foundation to the top. Immediately, the altar flashed with divine light as power leaked out crazily. The 8 stone pillars around the altar also flashed with 5-color divine light. Billions of runes and patterns flickered. An incomparably violent aura brewed between heaven and earth. An invisible power that shook heaven and earth and space-time was breaking out of the ground. A vast and boundless aura enveloped the entire reef island, suppressing everyone. The two god generals and more than a dozen god kings all revealed expressions of horror and confusion. After being stunned for a moment, the Blood Hell Marshal's expression changed drastically as his eyes suddenly widened. It's over. The Blood Hell Marshal had a bad feeling as his heart rose to his throat. Chapter 3573. If the battlefield was not near the space-time altar, if it was anywhere else, the Blood Hell Marshal was confident that he could have killed Kenshin. However, in the vicinity of the altar, he was afraid of breaking the vases and didn't dare to attack with all his might. He knew that Kenshin was very cunning and would definitely use his power to destroy the altar. However, he did not dare to use his full strength. Not only was he unable to kill Kenshin, but he also could not stop Kenshin from activating the altar. Seeing that the altar was about to open, the Blood Hell Marshal became anxious and attacked with all his might. The result was as he expected. The altar that was about to open was destroyed by him and opened prematurely. He had helped Kenshin in disguise. At this moment, the Blood Hell Marshal was filled with regret. His expression was extremely ugly. Rumble, the reef island that was already in pieces, collapsed under the violent shaking. Countless boulders sank into the sea of lava, creating towering waves of fire. Inside the space-time altar, something was struggling violently, as if trying to break free from the seal and shackles. As a result, the altar shook violently and soon collapsed, scattering countless rubble. The 8 stone pillars flashed with a dazzling 5-colored light. All the runes and patterns were lit up. Of course, as the altar collapsed, the 8 stone pillars also cracked, scattering rubble. The Heavenly War Divine General, the 7 Malice Divine Generals, and the dozen or so divine kings looked at this scene with their mouths agape. It was as if the sky had collapsed. It's over. The altar created by His Majesty the God Emperor was destroyed, just like that. Kenshin seems to have not completely opened the altar. Even if the altar is damaged, it shouldn't be like this. The altar is damaged and can no longer seal the space-time channel. It's about to appear. That invisible power is so terrifying. I can't move at all. Is this the power of the space-time channel? Apart from His Majesty, the God Emperor, I'm afraid no one can stop or seal the space-time channel. Once the space-time channel appears, Kenshin will definitely escape to the Dragon Realm. Don't worry, we still have a chance. We must stop him from entering the space-time channel. Since the altar is damaged, we don't have to worry anymore. Let's kill Kenshin together. The collapse of the space-time altar was inevitable. At this point, the Bloodhelm Marshal, Tianjan, and the Seven Fiends no longer had any misgivings. They all attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. Kenshin, you damn bastard, go to hell. Even if your scheme succeeds and the space-time channel appears, don't even think about entering it alive. The three powerhouses roared angrily as they unleashed an earth-shattering divine art that poured down like a flood, drowning Ji Tianxing. Their strength was relatively strong. Even if they were suppressed by the formless divine might, they could still move and attack. It was just that their strength was greatly weakened. As for the dozen or so guard commanders, they had already suffered heavy injuries and were being suppressed by the invisible divine might. They did not have much combat strength left, so they naturally could not attack. They could only endure their injuries and cheer for Marshal Bloodhell and the other two. It seemed that Ji Tianxing was about to be hit by the divine light and die on the spot. His injuries were too severe, and he could not dodge or resist. At the critical moment of life and death, he hid in the Jiuqian 10 Absolute's tower. He used the same trick again. The divine tower turned into a speck of dust and hid in the ruins under the altar. Bam, 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 boom, boom. The ultimate skills of the Blood Prison Marshal and the two divine generals all landed on the shattered altar. Following a deafening explosion, the already fragmented altar was completely smashed into smithereens. Billions of five-color divine stones and gems were scattered on the ground, covering a radius of 100,000 feet. They shone with a bright divine light. The materials used to build the altar were all top-grade divine stones and gems. Their value was immeasurable, but at this moment, no one was moved. Instead, their hands and feet were cold, and they were filled with despair. This was because the altar had been completely destroyed. The space-time channel that was sealed in the altar was revealed and suspended in mid-air. It was a white vortex of light with a radius of 1,000 feet. It was as bright and dazzling as the bright moon in the sky. The depths of the vortex were pitch black and looked very mysterious. This was the space-time channel that connected to the Dragon Realm. It quietly suspended in mid-air, exuding a vast and mighty spatial divine power that made everyone's heart palpitate. Even the Bloodhelm Marshal, who was a 9th-level divine king, was like a firefly compared to the light of the moon when compared to the power of the space-time channel. Everyone deeply felt their insignificance and powerlessness in front of the space-time channel. At this moment, everyone's expression changed drastically. Their hearts were burning with worry, but they were helpless. It's completely over now. The space-time channel has appeared. His Majesty the God Emperor is not here. No one can seal it. That bastard sword god, he really succeeded. Once he escapes back to the Dragon Realm, he will definitely come back for revenge when he returns to his peak. We must eliminate him completely. We must not give him a chance to rise again. But he's hiding in that mysterious black tower. Even the Grand Marshal can't do anything to him. More than a dozen divine kings stared at the space-time channel with complicated expressions. They used their divine senses to search for traces of the divine tower. At this moment, a black dot flew out from the rubble on the ground and flew toward the space-time channel as fast as lightning. Everyone's pupils shrank as they exclaimed, "It's Kenshin. He's escaping. Quick, stop him. We must not let him enter the space-time channel." While everyone was exclaiming, the Bloodhelm Marshal, Tianjan, and the 7 Kills divine generals had already attacked with lightning speed, using their divine abilities to stop that black dot. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Destructive divine technique light shadows slammed into the Jiuqian 10 Absolute's tower. However, the divine tower had shrunk to the size of a sesame seed. Even if it was hit by a few divine abilities, it was still fine. The divine tower's defense was very strong. Even if it was hit and rolled dozens of times, it was still intact. It drew an arc in the air and continued to fly toward the space-time channel. In the blink of an eye, it flew into the white light vortex and entered the depths of the vortex. The Bloodhelm Marshal and the two divine generals wanted to stop it, but it was too late. However, the divine tower only stopped for a moment in the white light vortex. Ji Tianxing's cold voice rang out from the divine tower and reverberated between heaven and earth. Bloodhell, thank you for destroying the altar and opening the space-time channel for me. To express my gratitude, when I return, I will definitely kill all of you and grind your bones to dust. Until we meet again. While his voice was still reverberating between heaven and earth, the divine tower had already entered the darkness in the depths of the white light vortex and disappeared. More than a dozen divine kings stood there in a daze. They were filled with regret as they beat their chests and cursed angrily. The Bloodhelm Marshal glared at the space-time channel. His eyes were bloodshot from anger as he gritted his teeth. His entire body emitted a terrifying killing intent. However, he did not say anything. He only clenched his teeth tightly as he suppressed his monstrous hatred and killing intent. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's words from before appeared in his mind again. How do you know if you can survive if you don't try? Chapter 3574. When Ji Tianxing said this, everyone took it as a joke. No one believed that he could withstand the attack of the Bloodhelm Marshal and escape the reef island alive. But now he really did it. Everyone recalled how they mocked and ridiculed Ji Tianxing back then, and they all felt their faces burning with shame. The scene was silent. Everyone was speechless, and their hearts were heavy and dejected. Who knew that the marshal was so angry that he was about to explode? At this time, no one dared to make a sound. Otherwise, they would be courting death. No matter how serious their injuries were, the dozen or so god kings had to hold on. The Bloodhelm Marshal stood there in a daze as he stared at the space-time tunnel. After a long while, he retracted his gaze. You guys stay behind to clean up the battlefield and rebuild the base. This seat will report this matter from beginning to end to His Majesty, the God Emperor. The Bloodhelm Marshal left these two sentences expressionlessly before turning and flying away. Tianzhan, the seven fiends, and the dozen or so god kings hurriedly bowed and respectfully sent the Bloodhelm Marshal off. Only when the Bloodhelm Marshal flew out 30,000 miles and disappeared into the depths of the lava sea did everyone heave a sigh of relief. Tianzhan and the seven fiends did not dare to delay and hurriedly carried out the Bloodhelm Marshal's orders. Those with severe injuries, immediately circulate your energy to heal. The rest, follow me and cast the spell to rebuild the reef island. You guys go clean up the battlefield and tidy up the corpses and belongings of your companions. Following the two god generals' orders, the dozen or so god kings immediately got busy. At the same time, in the Star Source continent of the Dragon Realm, the Tianxiang Empire in the southwest of the continent was the most prosperous empire among the surrounding empires. It was early in the morning when the sun rose, and the imperial capital, Tianxiang City, was already bustling with noise and excitement. The square in the center of the city was a full 5 miles wide, and there were actually hundreds of thousands of demon commoners gathered there. The royal family that ruled the Tianxiang Empire was the Tianxiang clan. But in the various continents of the Dragon Realm, the thousands of branches of the demon race could all coexist peacefully. Other than the 7 ancestors of the demon race who were publicly recognized as nobles, the dragons, phoenixes, and the 4 sacred beasts who were the top-notch bloodlines, the other demon races were of equal status. In the crowded square, demons in weird outfits could be seen everywhere. There were handsome foxes, boorish bulls, domineering tigers and lions, as well as all kinds of beasts. Most of these demons were in human form, but they still retained many of their racial characteristics. There were also a small number of demons who did not transform. They still maintained their original forms of demon beasts and spirit beasts. However, these were all relatively small in size. For example, if the mountain-sized demons lived in the city in their original form, many things would remain the same. Over 100,000 demons had completely surrounded the square. The common people were all excited, discussing something passionately. Fortunately, There were tens of thousands of red-armored guards inside and outside the square, coldly and majestically maintaining order. Otherwise, the square would have been in chaos. In the middle of the square, there was an arena that was suspended in the air. It had a radius of 3,000 meters and was protected by several layers of dark golden shields. Countless commoners were staring at the arena, discussing who would emerge victorious, which young genius had recently made a breakthrough, or had learned some kind of divine ability. Of course, there were also many commoners who were talking about how beautiful and intelligent the little princess was. Not long after, an exquisite and luxurious flying boat arrived above the square. A young man in a golden robe from the Tian-Xiang tribe landed on the arena, surrounded by many guards. This young man in the golden robe was the crown prince of the Tian-Xiang Empire. He was tall and strong, with a stocky build. On his broad and thick face, there was a 2-foot-long elephant trunk that curved naturally to his chest. His 2 walnut-sized nostrils were embedded with exquisite and noble gems that shone brightly under the sun, making him look exceptionally noble. The crown prince of Tian-Xiang gave a solemn and dignified speech, and the square instantly quieted down. Over 100,000 commoners listened attentively. Of course, what he said was all dignified and pompous. The main content was about the emperor's favorite princess, Tian-Xiang, who had already reached the marriageable age. In accordance with the princess' wishes, the imperial family had decided to hold this arena competition. Only the young genius who emerged victorious would have the right to see the princess' true appearance. If this person had a good character and a clean background, he would be able to catch the princess' eyes and have the opportunity to marry her. Other than that, the crown prince of Tian-Xiang also announced a series of rules for the arena competition. Over 100,000 commoners listened patiently and applauded, waiting for the arena competition to begin. When the arena competition began, the crown prince of Tian-Xiang returned to the exquisite flying boat with dozens of guards. It was said that the princess was in the flying boat, watching the arena competition live. Countless commoners of the demon race were excited when they heard the news. They rubbed their palms together, eager to give it a try. Everyone wanted to be the champion, to become famous in the Tian-Xiang Empire, and to win the princess' heart. Unfortunately, there were conditions to participate in the arena competition. Not everyone had the right to participate. Even the commoners were discussing that the most promising young geniuses were the nobles of the imperial capital. The commoners of a poor family wanted to soar into the sky and rise to the top, but the chances were close to zero. Soon, the battle on the arena began. Pairs after pairs of outstanding demon race youths went up the arena, fighting with all their might. The crown prince of Tian-Xiang had repeatedly stated that this competition was mainly for learning from each other, and no one was allowed to kill. However, the young geniuses who went up the arena were all eager to win. Even if they were beaten black and blue and covered in blood, they refused to admit defeat. But the more they were like this, the more entertaining it was. The commoners cheered even louder, and the atmosphere was even more lively. As time passed, one after another, the wounded monster race youths left the arena, their hearts filled with dismay as they were defeated. Most of the victorious demon race youths were unrecognizable, and they were covered in blood. Many commoners and experts shook their heads when they saw the performance of these demon race youths. Everyone knew that even if these young geniuses could survive the first round, they would not be able to make it to the end. As expected, after 2 hours, more than half of the 100 contestants were eliminated, and only 20 or so remained. The remaining demon race youths had the strength of an upper-level divine lord. They were true geniuses. Moreover, these 20 or so geniuses were most likely the nobles of the Tian-Xiang Empire. Not only were they talented, but their appearances and temperaments were also outstanding. No matter who won the championship, they seemed to be able to convince the crowd. The competition continued. An hour later, more than 10 young geniuses were eliminated. 2 hours later, only 4 geniuses were left. When it was close to noon, the last 2 young geniuses were in the final duel. Not only were these 2 people's strength outstanding, but their families were also very famous. They were the sons of the top nobles in the imperial capital. seeing that the Divine Lion Race Youth had defeated the Peacock Race Youth with a single move and won the championship. Just as he was roaring excitedly, something unexpected happened. Chapter 3575. Roar! I am a #1 genius of the Imperial Capital. Only I am worthy of the little princess. The Divine Lion Race Youth dressed in dark gold divine armor raised his arms and shouted with a complacent attitude. The handsome Peacock Race Youth in gorgeous robes could only leave the stage with a dejected expression. Everyone felt that if the Divine Lion Race Youth won first place, he would definitely be favored by the little princess. After all, he was a true genius of the divine way and the eldest son of the Empire's marshal. His status was extremely illustrious. Such a talent would definitely be a good match for the little princess. However, just as everyone was cheering, someone realized that the Divine Lion Race Youth was looking up at the sky and was suddenly stunned. He stared blankly at the sky. The excited smile on his face disappeared and was replaced with a face full of doubt and surprise. Many of the commoners in the plaza noticed something amiss. Countless people raised their heads to look at the sky, following the gaze of the Divine Lion Race Youth. As a result, countless commoners saw a dazzling starlight rapidly falling from the cloudless blue sky. What's that? Look, there's a meteor. How strange. Why would there be a meteor in broad daylight? That's not right. That meteor is getting bigger and bigger. It seems like it's coming for us. As expected, it's going to land on the plaza. Everyone run. Following bursts of exclamations from the crowd, the hundreds of thousands of commoners immediately exploded. Like a colony of ants being burned by fire, they frantically fled outwards. In the next moment, the meteor that was as big as a palace landed in the middle of the plaza. Coincidentally, it smashed into the arena. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded through the sky. The dark golden shield that enveloped the arena was actually shattered on the spot, causing fragments to fly everywhere. A violent shockwave, wrapped in countless fragments of divine light, spread out in all directions, engulfing the entire plaza. Immediately, nearly 100,000 demon race commoners who were unable to escape in time were all shaken by the shockwave and fell to the ground in a sorry state. After 10 breaths of time, the deafening sound and the divine light fragments that filled the sky finally dissipated. Silence returned to the plaza. The hundreds of thousands of demon race commoners who were still in shock hurriedly stood up and looked towards the stage. Oh my God, the meteor actually hit the stage. That kid is still on the stage. Didn't he get hit by the meteor? Oh my God, am I that unlucky? Just as he was about to win the crown and marry the little princess, he was struck by a meteor. How tragic. Quick, check if that kid is dead or not. If he were to be killed by the meteor, wouldn't that young genius from the Peacock race become #1? Countless Monster Clan commoners were discussing at once. Their gazes focused on the messy arena, searching for the figure of the Divine Lion Race Youth. He saw that a huge pit had been smashed into the arena, and pieces of bricks and stones were scattered everywhere. There were no meteors in the arena, nor were there any burning meteorites. There was only a pitch-black divine pagoda that was 30 meters tall, lying quietly in the ruins, flickering with a faint black light. As for the unlucky Divine Lion Race Youth, he was pressed under the divine pagoda, and half of his body was buried under the bricks. He lay motionless in the ruins. His face was covered in blood, and he was already out of breath. Fortunately, the divine pagoda had smashed into the arena's shield first. Those layers of shields have been shattered, weakening the impact by 80%. If not for those layers of shields, the Divine Lion Race Youth would have been smashed in a meat paste and died on the spot. Hiss! This is too tragic. I thought it was a meteor, but I didn't expect it to be a divine pagoda. What's going on? A divine artifact from the heavens? If it really was a divine artifact from the heavens, then it would be his good fortune, but this is obviously not the case, right? I wonder if this was a deliberate murder or an accident. No matter what the reason is, I feel that the owner of the Divine Pagoda is dead for sure. The Marshal's mansion will not let him off. Many of the Monster Clan commoners looked at the Divine Lion Race Youth with sympathy as they whispered to each other. At this time, Crown Prince Tianxiang hurriedly brought the guards out of the divine worship and rushed to the stage to check on the situation. It was obvious that Crown Prince Tianxiang was also stunned by this sudden scene. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Crown Prince Tianxiang and the guards had just landed on the stage and were about to push open the divine pagoda to rescue the unconscious divine lion race youth. Unexpectedly, with a flash of white light, the pitch-black divine pagoda disappeared. Above the ruins, a handsome dragon race youth wearing a white robe appeared out of thin air. This person was over 10 feet tall. His body was tall and sturdy. His aura was sacred and dignified. His face was handsome and resolute, and his pair of deep eyes were like stars. However, he seemed to have suffered heavy injuries. His robes and hair were stained with blood, and his aura was somewhat chaotic. He looked around and saw the ruins, the unconscious divine lion race youth, and the stunned crown Prince Tianxiang and the others. He immediately revealed an apologetic smile. Cough, cough. I'm sorry, this was an accident. The dragon race youth rubbed his cheeks awkwardly and said to Crown Prince Tianxiang with a smile, I have no intention of ruining your ceremony. I'm really sorry. You guys continue. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. With that, he waved at Crown Prince Tianxiang and turned to leave. Crown Prince Tianxiang frowned and looked at him with a gloomy face. The unconscious divine lion race youth also struggled to pull open the ruins. He raised a hand and shouted in a muffled voice, You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to leave. At the same time, there was a clear and melodious voice in the sky that sounded at the same time. The dragon race youth could only stop and turn his head to look at the divine lion race youth, then look at the sky. From the luxurious flying boat, a young lady from the sky elephant race flew out. She was clad in a brocade robe and was followed by 4 female guards. She flew across the sky as fast as lightning and landed on the stage, blocking in front of the dragon race youth and staring at him with burning eyes. According to the aesthetic standards of the Tianxiang clan, this girl with broad shoulders and a sturdy body was indeed a beauty that only appeared once in 100 years. However, according to the aesthetic standards of the dragon race youth, not to mention anything else, just the elephant nose on her round plate face was already very out of place. May I ask what you want to do? The dragon race youth looked at the Tianxiang clan girl indifferently and asked. The Tianxiang clan girl's face was as cold as frost. She shouted in a dignified tone. Firstly, you came down from the sky and defeated Shi Yunrui. You are the champion of this competition. You want to marry me. Secondly, you severely injured Shi Yunrui. You must try to heal him as an apology. So you can't leave now. You must be responsible to me, to Shi Yunrui. What? Marry you? The dragon race youth was dumbfounded on the spot. His expression became extremely interesting. Chapter 35:76. The arena was completely silent. The words of the little princess not only caused the young man from the dragon race to be stunned, even the crown prince was dumbfounded, as though he was petrified. Shi Yunrui, who was lying in the ruins, opened his eyes wide, his face stupefied. No one would have thought that the little princess would make such a hasty decision. No, this was not hasty. This was nonsense. Before the dragon youth could refuse, the crown prince came back to his senses. He quickly waved his hand to dissuade her. Little sister, don't mess around. There are rules in the arena. Shi Yunrui is the champion. Even if you want to marry him, you should marry him. This person, he didn't even participate in the competition. How could he marry you? The crown prince spoke in a more tactful manner. But what he meant was that this dragon youth was very unfamiliar. How could she make such a decision when she didn't know his background and identity? Shi Yunrui, who was lying in the ruins and covered in blood, was also agitated. He waved his arms and shouted in a muffled voice, Your Highness, this is against the rules. Who would have thought that the little princess of celestial phenomenon would furrow her brows as she coldly stated, What rules? My words are the rules. Her tone toward Shi Yunrui was unfriendly. She was emitting a cold aura. Shi Yunrui was already on the verge of fainting. After hearing the little princess's anger, he didn't dare to speak anymore. The crown prince frowned and wanted to dissuade the little princess again. However, the little princess glared at him and said coldly, "Big brother, do you want to ruin my happiness? Sure, Yunrui has been pursuing me since 10 years ago. If I was willing to marry him, would this arena be held? Could it be that you think that sure Yunrui obtaining first place is really justified?" The crown prince fell silent. Of course, he knew that sure Yunrui had been pursuing his little sister. This was something that everyone in the imperial capital knew. Even if the little princess wanted to find a husband, sure Yunrui had said that he was determined to get first place. There were two young geniuses who were stronger than sure Yunrui. They were both bought over by sure Yunrui. As the crown prince of Tian Elephant Race, he knew all of this. He just didn't point it out. He didn't expect the little princess to see it so clearly. After hesitating for a moment, the crown prince couldn't help but persuade. "Little sister, even if you don't want to marry sure Yunrui, you can't be so willful. This guy's background is unknown." Before he could finish his sentence, Tian Myriad's little princess sent a telepathic message to him. No matter where he comes from, or whether he has a powerful background, his identity as a dragon is enough. Moreover, his strength is unfathomable. He has obviously surpassed the divine monarch realm and reached the divine king realm. A divine king of the dragon clan. Is there a more noble and suitable husband than him? Crown Prince Tian Myriad was speechless. He couldn't help but glance at the young dragon. That's right, in the dragon realm, the dragon, phoenix, qilin, and the four divine beasts had the highest status. They were all supreme bloodlines that were unreachable. Below the 7 top divine beast bloodlines was the bloodline of the 7 ancestors of the demon clan. At the same time, it was also the bloodline of the aristocrats of the various continents. As for the celestial phenomenon race, they couldn't even be considered a noble bloodline. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to cozy up to the bloodlines of the dragons and phoenixes, let alone a god-king expert. Even if this young man from the dragon race was just a heavenly god, he was more than qualified to be a match for the little princess. Since that was the case, the crown prince no longer had an excuse to stop them. At this moment, the dragon youth finally understood the current situation. He looked at the little princess and frowned. "Is this a martial arts competition? Miss Tian Elephant Race. Although I accidentally intruded and brought trouble to you, I didn't mean it. But I didn't do it on purpose, and I won't stay here." The little princess looked at him calmly and asked, "Young master, may I know your name?" "Long Tian." The dragon youth replied without hesitation. Obviously, he was Ji Tianxing. Previously, he used the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower to leave the divine world. According to his experience, he would appear in the Dragon Realm's Star Source continent and land under the Dragon God altar. But he didn't expect the Dragon Realm to remove the Dragon God altar. As a result, the power of the space-time tunnel went out of control and sent the Divine Tower to another place. Then, the Divine Pagoda fell from the sky uncontrollably and smashed onto the altar. All of this was a coincidence. However, Ji Tianxing knew it in his heart, but he couldn't explain it to the little princess. The little princess pointed at the hundreds of thousands of people in the square and said, "Long Tian, the hundreds of thousands of people in the imperial capital saw everything with their own eyes. It's impossible for you to leave after causing such a mess. I hope you can cooperate and follow me into the imperial capital. We can discuss the future. At the very least, we can't ignore the injured, and we can't argue about the right and wrong of this matter in front of the people." Ji Tianxing looked at the hundreds of thousands of people in the square. Their eyes were focused on him, and they were whispering to each other. To be honest, he didn't want to be pointed at by so many people. Not only that, the little princess and crown prince of Tian Myriad weren't evil people. This matter could still be discussed. Thus, Ji Tianxing nodded. "All right, let's go somewhere else." Seeing that he agreed, the little princess and the crown prince's expression softened. The crown prince announced in front of the crowd that there was an accident in the marriage contest and they would stop here. He asked the people to leave as soon as possible. After saying that, he brought the little princess and Ji Tianxing to the flying ship in the sky. The few guards who followed him quickly carried the unconscious Shi Yunrui and entered the flying ship. As the flying ship left the square and flew towards the imperial capital, this matter ended. As for the result, the crown prince didn't announce it in front of the crowd, so no one could guess. This matter was considered to be left unsettled. The flying ship landed in the imperial capital. The crown prince and a few guards personally sent Shi Yunrui back to the marshal's residence and explained the matter to the grand marshal. Meanwhile, the little princess of Tian Myriad Phenomenon and Ji Tianxing were temporarily staying in a magnificent palace. Of course, the architecture of the Dragon Realm was different from the divine world. Even the sacred and solemn palace revealed a strange and demonic aura. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing had lived in the Dragon Realm for more than 100 years and was used to everything. After the little princess settled him down, she quickly left to personally explain the situation to the emperor. Other than Ji Tianxing, there was only a fox steward, a few bear guards, and a few made from the Liu clan left in the palace. Taking advantage of the little princess' absence, Ji Tianxing found the old fox steward and asked him about the situation. After asking, he found out that he was in the southwest of the Star Source continent, in the capital of the Tianxiang Empire. Tianxiang Empire? I seem to have some impression of it. Ji Tianxing stayed in the room alone and fell into deep thought. This empire seems to be in the Green Lotus region. It seems to be one of the stronger empires. Chapter 3577. Even though Kenshin had lived in the Dragon Realm for more than 100 years back then, but the Dragon Realm was just too big, not the least bit inferior to the God Realm. The layout of the world here was almost the same as the God Realm. Most of the area was ocean, and there were 5 continents and countless islands scattered around. On each continent, there are dozens of large and small regions, and each region had many empires. Seriously speaking, this world should be called the Demon Realm. After all, 99% of the living beings here were demons and all kinds of demon beasts. When demons from the lower realm became gods, they would also ascend here. When Ji Tianxing ascended, he used the 5 elements world to bring Black Dragon and Xianyu, allowing them to ascend to the God Realm. Otherwise, they would definitely ascend to the Dragon Realm. However, the dragon race was the most powerful race in this world and also the overlord of the 5 continents. Therefore, this world was called the Dragon Realm. Back then, Kenshin lived here for more than 100 years, and half of his time was spent in closed-door cultivation. The other half of his time, he traveled all over the 5 continents, traveled the 4 seas, and adventured everywhere. However, each continent had dozens of regions and thousands of empires. At most, he could only remember some regions, but not which empires there were. Forget it. Since I've come to the Tianxiang Empire, I'll rest here for a while. Anyway, everyone is seriously injured and needs to recuperate in closed-door cultivation for a long time. If the Tianxiang Emperor is easy to talk to, this matter is nothing. If he's not easy to talk to, these monarchs can't stop me. After figuring out the current position and situation, Ji Tianxing was at ease and was not anxious. The Star Source continent was located in the center of the Dragon Realm, and the other 4 continents were in the east, south, west, and north respectively. He returned to the Dragon Realm, firstly to find his son, Wuhan, and secondly to visit the old dragon. That old dragon was resting in the Tianlong continent, and it was very far away from here. It would not be able to rush back in a short time, so there was no hurry. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing entered the secret chamber, took out the Juqian Tenju Pagoda, and entered the distorted space to heal. Several bear guards stood guard outside the secret room. On the surface, they seemed to be protecting him, but in reality, they were monitoring him. To put it bluntly, Ji Tianxing was currently under house arrest in this palace, awaiting the punishment of the little princess and the emperor of Tianxiang. As for how to resolve this matter, the little princess was currently discussing it with the emperor of Tianxiang. In the depths of the palace, Emperor Tianxiang's study room. The emperor of celestial phenomenon sat on a spacious divine stone throne with a frown on his face as he stared at the little princess of celestial phenomenon. Even though he doted on his smart and far-sighted little daughter the most, which was why she was so confident and assertive. But today, after he heard the whole story, he frowned deeply. Xiang Yu, although you didn't make a big mistake in this matter, you were too reckless. If that person only had the bloodline of one of the 7 great noble families, this matter would still be manageable. However, that young man was a member of the Dragon Clan. Furthermore, according to what you said, he seems to be a divine king powerhouse. A dragon with such strength and status must have a great background. Our Tianxiang Empire can't afford to offend them. In the entire Tianxiang Empire, there was only one divine king powerhouse. That was the old ancestor of the royal family. Although this old ancestor often went into closed-door seclusion and didn't show his face for hundreds and thousands of years. Furthermore, he was only a first-degree realm lower divine king. However, it was his existence that allowed Tianxiang Empire to surpass the other empires and become the most powerful among the 8 nearby empires. It was precisely because the Emperor of Tianxiang knew the power of a divine king that his expression was so solemn. Little Princess Xiang Yu frowned and retorted, "Imperial Father, based on the situation at that time, I could only do this. You know that I don't like Shi Yunrui. Even if he pursued me for 10 years, it was useless. If I don't like him, I don't like him. However, he bribed 2 opponents and won the first place in front of everyone. I can't go back on my words." At this time, Long Tian accidentally landed on the stage and injured Shi Yunrui, which also ruined the marriage by martial arts competition. I could only beat him at his own game and let the marriage by martial arts competition end without a conclusion and keep Long Tian here. Imperial Father, I saw that he was seriously injured and his character isn't cold and arrogant. He should be easy to get along with. Plus, he must have met with some accident, which was why he fell from the sky. I arranged for him to stay in the palace. As long as we put in more effort and methods, we might be able to keep him here. If he is really willing to marry me as his wife, then it will be my and Tianxiang's royal family's honor. Xiang Yu was different from other unruly princesses. Although her character was stubborn and dictatorial, she was shrewd and good at scheming. Compared to the crown prince, she was calmer and smarter. Emperor of Tianxiang frowned and thought for a while before nodding slightly. Xiang Yu, I understand your thoughts. You think that you are extraordinary and look down on ordinary demon clan geniuses. Not to mention the dragon and phoenix bloodline, at least the 7 aristocratic bloodline geniuses will be able to enter your eyes. You accidentally met this Long Tian, so it's understandable for you to want to seize the opportunity. But you must remember that you must be patient with this Dragon Clan youth. You must not provoke him. Of course, if you have the chance, it's best to investigate his cultivation realm and his identity and background. Only when you understand him well enough, then we can decide whether to keep him or not. Xiang Yu nodded and said, "Father, don't worry. I know what to do. Although he is under house arrest in the Cloud Palace, I have instructed the servants and guards to treat him with the utmost respect and not to offend him in any way. But as for the marshal's residence, I still need you to appease them. That disappointing fellow, Shi Yunrui, will definitely feel wronged and complain to the marshal." Emperor of Tianxiang nodded again and waved his hand. "All right, I will persuade the marshal. As for that Long Tian, I will leave it to you to receive and deal with him. I will not step in. If you two don't get along well, I will step in." His meaning was clear. If there was a conflict between Xiang Yu and Long Tian, at least he could step in and resolve it. "Thank you, Father, for your help." Xiang Yu bowed and left in satisfaction. After walking out of the study, she looked up at the scorching sun in the sky and secretly clenched her fists. She muttered, "Appearance, temperament, bloodline, and strength are all excellent choices. How can I miss out on this? Only such an extraordinary young man from the dragon race is worthy of me, Xiang Yu." Although she had lived for more than 1,000 years, she only had the strength of a high-level divine lord. In the entire Tianxiang Empire, she could only be considered a first-rate genius and not the top. But she had been the apple of Tianxiang Emperor's eyes since she was young. She was doted on by the entire royal family, and even her brothers gave in to her. This raised her to be arrogant and had a very high standard. All along, she had looked down on the most outstanding young geniuses in Tianxiang Empire. She always felt that only the descendants of the 7 aristocratic bloodlines could match her status. And now, a dragon clan youth had fallen from the sky. This was a gift from the heavens to her. How could she not cherish it? Chapter 3578. Only 2 days had passed in the Dragon Realm. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, had been recuperating in the distorted space-time for 3 months. His injuries had recovered by 80%, and his mental state had also returned to its peak. Originally, he wanted to recuperate in seclusion for another 2 months to completely heal his injuries. But unfortunately, someone kept knocking on the door of the secret chamber. After he sensed it, he could only end his recuperation and walk out of the secret chamber. When the 2 Bear Clan guards outside the door saw him appear, they hurriedly bowed in greeting. "Young Master Long, Her Highness is waiting for you in the living room. She has something to discuss with you." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and walked towards the living room. He thought to himself, there has to be an explanation for this matter. Since she came to find me, then let's have a talk. After a while, he entered the bright and spacious living room. Xiangyu was sitting on the main seat, looking dignified. Her clothes and hair accessories were also very exquisite. It was obvious that she had dressed up meticulously. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing frowned slightly, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But he did not show any abnormalities. He cupped his hands towards Xiangyu and sat down. "You're looking for me because of the previous matter?" Although his attitude was relaxed and indifferent, he was not polite and did not address her as Her Highness. But Xiangyu did not mind and felt that it was natural. There was no choice. Who asked him to be the noblest dragon? "Young Master Long Tian, Yun Rue has already been sent back to the Marshal's residence. His injuries were treated in time and should not be a problem. Also, I have personally explained to the Marshal and pleaded with him. The Marshal's residence will not blame you." Ji Tianxing nodded and thanked her. Xiangyu's gaze became much gentler. Her originally reserved attitude became more fervent. Obviously, she saw the hope of improving their relationship. Thus, she took the opportunity to ask, "Ji Tianxing, young Master Long, I saw that your complexion was not good and your body was stained with blood. You seem to have suffered serious injuries. Can you tell Ben Gong what happened to you? Also, I had not asked where you are from." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "I did encounter an accident and suffered serious injuries, but I can't tell you the details. Furthermore, there's no need for you to inquire about my background and origins." Young Master Long, what do you mean?" Xiangyu was startled. She frowned and looked a little disappointed. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Then I'll be frank. You and I are strangers. If it weren't for this accident, you and I wouldn't have met, let alone know each other. Since there is no problem with Yun Rue, I will leave today. Of course, you helped me dissuade the Grand Marshal, so I owe you a favor. I can compensate you." At this point, he pondered for a moment before continuing, "You're the little princess of the Tianxiang Empire, and it seems like you're quite favored. You definitely don't lack cultivation resources. How about this? I'll give you a King Grey God artifact as a thank you gift, and we'll be even. How about it?" Anyway, he had dozens of king-level lower divine artifacts stored in his spatial ring. Since he had no use for them, he didn't mind giving one away. However, to the Tianxiang Empire, a king-grade lower divine artifact could be said to be in existence that protected the empire. Returning a favor like this was considered a big deal. Xiangyu was obviously startled. For a moment, she was tempted. However, she immediately restrained the urge to nod. She hurriedly shook her head and said, "No, young Master Long, although a King Grey God artifact is precious, this is not what I want." "Then what do you want?" Ji Tianxing asked subconsciously. However, he regretted it after asking. Xiangyu suppressed her embarrassment and mustered the courage to look him in the eye. She said in a serious tone, You want me?" Although Ji Tianxing had already expected this result, he was still speechless. Xiangyu said with a red face, "You defeated Yun Rue. You're number one, so you have to marry me." Ji Tianxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. I said that it was an accident. Your request is unreasonable. You only have two choices now. Accept or reject my gift. You only have 10 breaths of time to consider. When the time is up, I will leave. Xiangyu was instantly filled with anxiety. Her eyes reddened as she asked, "But you ruined my joust for a spouse. Shouldn't you make it up to me? Even if you don't want to marry me for the time being, you should stay a little longer. Maybe after we get to know each other, you'll—" Without waiting for her to finish, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "Your Highness, you and I both know that you don't want to marry Shi Yunrui. Coincidentally, I fell from the sky, so you used me as an excuse. However, I already have a wife and children, and I'm not interested in the celestial phenomenon race. Sorry." With that, he took out a crimson battle axe from his spatial ring and placed it on the table in front of Xiangyu. "This is a thank you gift. Goodbye." After putting down the axe, he got up and was about to leave. Although he was indeed in the wrong first, injuring Shi Yunrui and ruining Xiangyu's martial arts competition. However, he had given a king-grade, low-grade god artifact as a thank you gift. That was already the best he could do. Most importantly, he didn't want to continue being entangled. This matter was Xiangyu's wishful thinking. There was nothing to talk about. "Stop right there." Seeing Ji Tianxing walk to the door of the living room, Xiangyu hurriedly chased after him. "Young Master Long, are you looking down on the celestial phenomenon race? Do you think that we have a low-grade bloodline and are not worthy of your dragon race bloodline?" Xiangyu opened her arms and stood in front of Ji Tianxing, looking at him with tears in her eyes. At first, she felt wronged, and her tone was quite sad. However, Ji Tianxing looked at her little elephant nose swaying in front of his eyes and couldn't help but want to laugh. "Cough, cough. Don't misunderstand. I don't have such thoughts. Then why don't you want to stay a day longer? Do you hate me so much?" Xiangyu stubbornly raised her head with a pleading look in her eyes. "Sigh." Ji Tianxing sighed and shook his head. He had already seen through Xiangyu's thoughts. He wanted to give her a king gray god artifact, and this matter would end here. Since she insisted on being entangled, he could only be merciless. "Little princess, have a good rest. We won't meet again." He smiled at Xiangyu as he said this. Before Xiangyu could react, he released an invisible spiritual energy and hit Xiangyu's mind. Instantly, Xiangyu felt a buzzing sound in her mind, and then she lost consciousness. She closed her eyes and slowly fell to the ground. She fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianxing didn't stay any longer. He strode out of the living room and left quickly. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he used the art of invisibility and quietly left the Cloud Palace. Even when he passed by the patrolling Imperial Guards and passed by the many hidden sentries in the palace, he wasn't discovered by anyone. With his strength as a divine king, he could come and go as he pleased within the borders of the celestial phenomenon empire. A quarter of an hour later, he left the imperial city and flew into the sky as fast as lightning, quickly disappearing into the distance. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3579. After leaving the imperial capital, Ji Tianxing was somewhat at a loss. For a moment, he actually did not know where to go. He had come to the Dragon Realm after many hardships in order to find Ji Wuhan. However, he didn't have the slightest clue as to where Ji Wuhan was. The only clue was that Ji Wuhan was rescued by a peak divine king from the Dragon Clan. Ji Tianxing saw the scene of Ji Wuhan being rescued with his own eyes. He was very sure that the one who rescued him was definitely from the Dragon Clan, and it was a peak divine king. Of course, it could also be a god emperor who surpassed the divine king realm, if the Dragon Realm had such a powerhouse. It was just a pity that Ji Tianxing was unable to distinguish which god king had saved Ji Wuhan. As far as he knew, there were more than 10 peak divine kings in the Dragon Realm. At the very least, the overlords who controlled the 5 continents were all peak divine kings. At the same time, those 5 overlords were also the targets of his investigation. However, with his current strength and realm, it was impossible for him to directly find the 5 overlords and ask about Ji Wuhan's whereabouts in person. This matter could only be discussed at length. Then let's go to the Green Lotus Domain first. Meet the Green Lotus Domain Lord. and inquire about the current situation. With this thought in mind, Ji Tianqing made up his mind to make the Green Lotus domain his first stop. He also wanted to know if there were any changes in the current Dragon Realm after 1,000 years. He had met the domain master of the Green Lotus region once in the past. The two of them had chatted for a while during a Godly King exchange meeting. He knew that the Green Lotus domain lord's cave abode was in a vast cloud pool mountain within the Light Wind Empire. Hence, he changed direction and flew toward the Light Wind Empire. In a flash, 3 days passed. The journey was safe and sound. Even though Ji Tianqing crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and encountered countless demonic beasts and demon clans along the way, no one dared to have any thoughts about him. Even groups of ferocious demonic beasts would not dare to bare their fangs at him. After all, he had the noblest dragon bloodline and was a divine king expert. The Dragon Realm situation was the same as the God Realms. There were only a few divine king realm powerhouses in each domain, and not everyone could see them. While they were on their way, Ji Tianqing also asked about Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. It had been 5 days since he arrived in the Dragon Realm. Everyone stayed in the distorted space-time and recuperated in seclusion for 8 months. Their injuries had all stabilized. However, it would take at least 3 to 5 years for him to fully recover. When everyone found out that Ji Tianqing was out of danger and had successfully escaped from the divine world and arrived at the Dragon Realm, they were all in high spirits. White Dragon, Black Dragon, and Qinyu were especially excited. As for Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan they did not feel anything. Anyway, they were following Ji Tianqing, so it didn't matter where they went. The most depressed person was none other than Bai Feng. He was a high and mighty domain lord who could call the wind and summon the rain in the divine world. Now that he followed Ji Tianqing, he could only be a guard. Furthermore, coming to the completely unfamiliar Dragon Realm, he was not used to it. As for Zhen Hong, Lin Shui, Lord Godblood Illusion, and the rest, they had been cultivating in seclusion in the distorted space-time and the divine ship, working hard to increase their strength. Ji Tianqing did not contact them, nor did he tell them about the current situation. Currently, he did not need them for the time being. They just needed to cultivate in peace. After inquiring about everyone's situation and seeing that everyone was fine, Ji Tianqing's mood was also very relaxed. In the divine world, he had already become the public enemy of the Boundless Heaven Continent and Reincarnation Island. Wherever he went, he would be hunted down, setting off waves of carnage. But in the Dragon Realm, no one knew him yet, and he did not have any enemies. He believed that this trip to the Dragon Realm would definitely be very relaxing and enjoyable. This evening, when the sun was setting in the west, Ji Tianqing arrived at the southern part of the Light Wind Empire. He landed in a city called Rain Swamp, preparing to rest for a while before heading to Cloud Swamp Mountain. Rain Swamp City was situated between the mountains and had a history of over 10,000 years. The overall style was rather ancient and heavy, and even had the peculiar temperament unique to the demon race. What ivory towers, tiger bone palaces, bell towers decorated with sparrow feathers could be seen everywhere here. Even the demon race commoners in the city were dressed in all sorts of strange costumes, very unconventional. Ji Tianqing had long gotten used to it, strolling in the bustling Rain Swamp City, releasing divine scents to envelop the entire city, listening to the sounds from all directions. Although there were thousands of languages in the demon race, each race had their own language. But after as long as several tens of thousands of years of subtle influence, all of the demon races reached a consensus. In the 5 continents of the Dragon Realm, the common language was a simple version of dragon language. Only when it involved inheritance and profound dragon race divine abilities and consummate skills would they use the ancient dragon language. Ji Tianqing seemed to be strolling leisurely, but in reality, his mind was constantly accepting a mess of voices, filtering out useful information from among them. After a short 2 hours, he had gathered dozens of useful information from the billions of voices. Among them, 3 were the most important. First, the current Green Lotus region had not changed much from 1,000 years ago, and the Green Lotus Region Master had not changed. Second, the Green Lotus region had been peaceful for the past 1,000 years, with neither war nor chaos. Third, the neighboring benevolent region had a strange phenomenon yesterday. It was said that a secret realm that had been sealed for 10,000 years had appeared, and it seemed to have something to do with the divine dragon. At present, this news had not spread, and only a few powerful people knew about it. They were discussing in secret, mobilizing elite troops, and preparing to go to the benevolent region to try their luck. Of course, this news was inadvertently heard by Ji Tianxing. Those few high-level divine lords of high status were hiding in some secret room and conversing, but they were discovered by his divine sense. Ji Tianxing was not interested in this. To him, the truly useful information was only the first two. It's good that the Green Lotus Region Master has not changed. If it was changed without the friendship from back then, it would not be easy to deal with. For the past 1,000 years, the Green Lotus region has been peaceful. Then he should still be cultivating in the domain chief's manner. I should not have made a wasted trip. Ji Tianxing muttered silently and was about to leave Rain Pool City and set off for Cloud Pool Mountain. However, just as he turned around, a handsome youth in luxurious clothes and a fur coat blocked his way. This was a youth from the Rock Clan. Although he looked 80% like a human, he still retained the characteristics of the Rock Clan. His cheeks were thin, his nose was hooked, and his pupils were golden. His arms were covered with dark golden feathers, and his fingers were sharp and long. The Rock Clan was one of the 7 ancestors of the Demon Clan and was also recognized as a noble among the demons in the Dragon Realm with a noble bloodline. Although this youth from the Rock Clan was still relatively young, he already had the strength of an 8th-level Divine Lord. In the small Rain Pool City, he was also ranked in the top 5 powerhouses. Brother Long, please hold on. The Rock Clan youth cupped his fists at Ji Tianxing and greeted with a smile. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly, looked at him expressionlessly, and asked, "What is it?" The Rock Clan youth still maintained a hearty smile and said in a friendly tone, "Brother Long, I've been secretly observing you for a long time. This should be your first time in Rain Pool City, right?" Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3580. You're following me? Ji Tianxing's brows furrowed, his gaze abruptly turning cold, even though he knew that the Rock Clan youth was talking nonsense. After all, his divine sense enveloped the entire city. The several million demon race commoners, every action was under his control. If someone took an extra glance at him, he would discover it, let alone following him. It was just that the Rock Clan youth deliberately said this. He would also appropriately show displeasure. The Rock Clan youth hurriedly waved his hands and explained, "Brother Long, calm your anger. I don't have any ill intentions. After all, we've never met before. It's just that Brother Long is handsome and valiant, with an imposing appearance. Regardless of whether it's form or temperament, it's all one in 10,000 noble. That's why I saw you at one glance in the vast sea of people. As the saying went, don't slap a smiling face." Ji Tianxing could feel that this person did not have any ill intentions. Only then did his furrowed brows relax. After all, what this guy said was the truth. Amen. He preferred honest people. "Speak, what on earth do you want?" Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as water. The Rock Clan youth was not in a hurry to answer. He smiled and answered with a question. "Brother Long, before answering this question, I want to ask, are you passing by here, or did you specially make a trip to Rain Pool City to do something? Is there a difference?" Ji Tianxing answered with a question. The Rock Clan youth nodded his head and said, "Of course there's a difference. If Brother Long is passing by here, then I want to do business with you. If Brother Long came to Rain Pool City to do something, then I want to be friends with Brother Long. After all, I, Peng Fei, still have some connections in this Rain Pool City." Ji Tianxing raised his brows and said straightforwardly, "I don't want to do any business, nor do I want to make friends." Peng Fei completely did not expect that he would reject so straightforwardly. Hence, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind, plucking up his courage, and said, "Brother Long, I don't have any ill intentions in the first place. Why do you have to reject people 1,000 miles away? Since that's the case, Then I'll make a bold guess that Brother Long, you're not passing by here, but specially made a trip here to do something. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said, "Why do you say that?" Peng Fei didn't explain. He revealed a confident smile and continued, "I'll make a bold guess. Brother Long should be looking for someone, and it's a powerhouse with a very honorable status. Let me think. It might be the Rain Pool City Lord. No, it shouldn't be him. If I'm not wrong, Brother Long's target is Cloud Pool Mountain, right?" Ji Tianxing sized him up, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile as he said, "Interesting. I remember that the great rock clan's inherited divine ability and talent is not to read minds and souls." "Of course not." Peng Fei smiled lightly and said, "This has nothing to do with my clan's bloodline, but as for the specifics, please forgive me for not being able to reveal." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "I'm not interested in your secrets. Tell me, what are you trying to do?" Peng Fei raised his eyebrows and said with a bitter smile, "Originally, I wanted to be friends with you, but looking at your attitude, you probably won't agree. Since that's the case, then let's talk business. I have a top-secret information that I want to sell to you. You'll definitely be interested." "Why should I be interested in something that has nothing to do with me?" Ji Tianxing asked back. Peng Fei said with certainty, "Because it's related to the Dragon Clan, and it's a huge opportunity." When he said this, Peng Fei's expression was serious, and he used divine sense voice transmission. Ji Tianxing suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but smile. "Okay, tell me." Peng Fei hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth and saying, "Originally, I wanted to sell this information for 20 million divine stones. If you don't pay, I won't reveal it. However, for Brother Long's sake, I can reveal a little first. Just yesterday, a strange phenomenon appeared somewhere. An ancient secret realm appeared, and it said that it's related to the Dragon Clan. Brother Long, I can only reveal this much." Finished talking, he looked at Ji Tianxing with a grin, a look of anticipation. He originally thought that Ji Tianxing would definitely be moved and continue to ask for the inside story. This way, he could open his mouth and ask for a price. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing said with a smile and a ruminating look, "If it's this information, then that 20 million divine stones won't be fated with you." What do you mean?" Peng Fei was stunned on the spot. Ji Tianxing transmitted his voice and replied, "Because I already know this information. The place you're talking about is the benevolent region." Peng Fei was stunned, revealing a disbelieving expression as he cried out in surprise, "How did you know? That's impossible. The news just spread out yesterday. In the entire Rainpool City, only 5 people know." Ji Tianxing patted his shoulder and said, "Kid, although you're quite interesting, we don't have anything to talk about. Goodbye." Finished talking, he was about to walk away. Only then did Peng Fei come back to his senses and hurriedly stopped him, saying in an anxious tone, "Brother Long, hold on. Since you know this information, could it be that you're not moved? Anyway, the benevolent region is very close. We can cooperate and explore that mystic realm together. I'll bring people and be in charge of gathering information and various miscellaneous tasks. After it's done, we'll split 50 to 50. Ji Tianxing didn't need to care about anything and could get 50% of the loot. Peng Fei's conditions were already very favorable, but Ji Tianxing still insisted on leaving. Not interested, Peng Fei hurriedly chased after him and followed behind him, bargaining continuously. "Then let's split it 40 to 60. You get 60% and I get 40%. How about we split it 30 to 70? You get 70%. Brother Long, don't go." Seeing Ji Tianxing's firm attitude and not being moved at all, Peng Fei pursed his lips, gritted his teeth, and said, "Brother Long, let's talk about exploring in the future. I have a way to bring you to Cloud Pool Mountain and help you see that elite immediately." Ji Tianxing's footsteps paused and turned to look at him. He said with a smile that was not a smile, "Are you sure? Do you know who that elite is?" Seeing him stop in his tracks, Peng Fei instantly regained his hope. He patted his chest and said, "Of course I'm sure." Ji Tianxing said with a playful smile, "I want to see Lu Ming." Lu Ming? Peng Fei frowned doubtfully. After thinking carefully, he suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed instantly. You're talking about His Excellency the Zone Leader? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He asked, Now, are you still sure that you can help me see him immediately? Peng Fei's expression was a little awkward. After hesitating for a while, he mustered his courage, gritted his teeth, and nodded. No problem, he had bragged. No matter what, he had to stick to it. He forget it. Ji Tianxing chuckled and continued walking forward. Peng Fei caught up with him again, questioning with a depressed expression. Brother Long, you don't believe me? What do you think? Ji Tianxing didn't even turn his head, his expression indifferent. Peng Fei hesitated for a moment before saying in a low voice, Forget it, I'll go all out. Actually, I'm the zone leader's martial nephew. Chapter 3581. This time, Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks. He turned his head to look at Peng Fei, the corners of his mouth holding a playful smile. Do you know what the consequences will be if this lie is exposed? Peng Fei was even more depressed. Brother Long, you still don't believe me? What do you think? Ji Tianxing chuckled. A random person on the street wants to sell me a piece of information for a sky-high price of 20 million. He even claims to be the Region Master's nephew. If it were you, would you believe it? All right, no one would believe it. Peng Fei could only nod in agreement. However, he refused to admit defeat. Brother Long, since you want to meet the Region Master, let me lead the way for you. When we meet the Region Master, it will be clear whether I'm telling the truth or not. Ji Tianxing smiled playfully. If your lie is exposed and the Region Master punishes you, I won't plead for you. Peng Fei nodded. What if it's true? Brother Long, why don't we work together and go to the benevolent region to explore the divine dragon mystery realm? Let's talk about this later. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and declined comment. Although the mystery realm was related to the divine dragon, he was not very interested. He basically knew all the divine skills of the dragon clan. However, if there were dragon balls, dragon bones, or dragon corpses in the mystery realm, he could consider going. Although he might not need them, the white dragon, black dragon, and Xinyu might need them. At the same time, in the depths of Yunzhi Mountain, above the vast sea of clouds, a dazzling divine palace stood at the top of the sea of clouds. Under the sunlight, it was dazzling and sacred. In the depths of the divine palace, in a luxurious secret room exclusive to the Region Master, a middle-aged demon clan man wearing a cloud-patterned green robe and a jade crown sat cross-legged on the altar. This middle-aged demon clan man was slender and strong. His face was resolute and dignified, and there were two pitch-black horns on his temples. If one was not an experienced and knowledgeable expert, it would be difficult to tell what clan he was from. At this moment, he was meditating with his eyes closed. He was concentrating on comprehending an upper-grade king-grade deity skill. He had been at the 6th level of the Divine King realm for 1,000 years, but he was still unable to break through to the 7th level. 20 years ago, he had gone through a lot of hardships and put in a lot of effort to get this king-grade upper-grade deity skill. This was his hope of breaking through the 7th-stage realm and becoming a high-level god king. But at this moment, someone knocked on the door of the secret chamber. The deep voice of a middle-aged man was transmitted into the secret chamber. Reporting to the region lord, the Emperor of Tianxiang sent a message saying that he has an urgent matter to report to you. Obviously, the middle-aged demon in the secret chamber was the Green Lotus Territorial Lord, Lu Ming. He was displeased that his cultivation was disturbed. He frowned and slowly ended his cultivation. He waved his hand and sent out a beam of divine light to open the door of the secret room. A middle-aged man dressed in armor and dressed as a guard walked into the secret room quickly. He held a communication jade slip in both hands and presented it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming lifted his sleeves expressionlessly and took the communication jade slip. He was about to check it with his divine consciousness. The guard continued. After the Emperor of Tianxiang sent a message, he brought a few experts with him, and they are rushing over at the fastest speed. He said that he wants to tell you the specific details in person. Lu Ming did not check the communication jade slip for the time being. He frowned and asked in a low voice, What exactly is the matter that made him so anxious that he has to come to see me personally? The guard bowed and answered truthfully, reporting to the region lord, the emperor of Tianxiang's most beloved daughter, the little princess of Tianxiang, has been killed. Eh. Lu Ming's frown deepened. He said somewhat angrily, "Even so, this is his family's matter. He is the emperor of Tianxiang. Can't he even settle this matter? He came to see me. Does he want me to help him investigate the murderer?" The guard was suppressed by Lu Ming's anger and suppression. His face was pale and his body was bent. He lowered his head even more and said in a low voice, "The emperor of Tianxiang said that the murderer of the little princess of Tianxiang is a big shot that he can't afford to offend. Only you can help him seek justice." Lu Ming's tightly knitted eyebrows relaxed. His anger then dissipated by a lot. "You may leave." He waved his hand and gestured for the guard to leave the secret room. He then used his divine consciousness to check the information in the jade slip. Outside Rainpool City, Ji Tianxing leisurely walked across the sky, traveling 1,000 miles with each step towards the Cloud Pool Mountain. Not far behind him, Pang Fei was sweating profusely. He tried his best to increase his speed, but the distance between them was still increasing. "Brother Long, slow down. Wait for me." As an 8th stage divine lord, Peng Fei had traveled all over the Green Lotus region and had never been so aggrieved. He was from the Rock clan and was naturally good at flying. He was as fast as lightning and far surpassed all the other demons. Among the powerhouses of the same realm, no one could surpass him. But now, Ji Tianxing had already slowed down, but he still could not catch up. While Peng Fei was secretly alarmed, he also had a preliminary judgment of Ji Tianxing's strength realm. He must be a God-King powerhouse, seeing that the distance between them had increased to more than 300 miles. Helpless, Peng Fei could only transform back to his original form to increase his speed. Swoosh! He transformed into a dark golden-winged rock that was as big as a mountain and flew across the sky at lightning speed. As such, his speed was indeed doubled. Wherever he flew past, the sky was covered. Storms and cyclones spread wantonly, stirring up the sea of clouds. After dozens of breaths, he finally caught up to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks and landed on his back unceremoniously. He said with a chuckle, "The rock spreads its wings and rides the wind, soaring up to 90,000 miles. You brat, when can you recreate old ancestor rock's glory?" If it were someone else, stepping on Peng Fei's back, treating him as a mount, and even teasing him like this, he would have long turned hostile. But Ji Tianxing doing this, apart from feeling a little uncomfortable in his heart, he did not have any resentment. Brother Long must be joking. My Rock clan's old ancestor is one of the demon race's 7 ancestors, the pinnacle God-King powerhouse. Even when looking at the entire dragon realm, there are scant few. How can we, the sons and grandsons of the Rock clan, dare to have extravagant hopes of reaching the old ancestor's realm? No ambition. Ji Tianxing just smiled and did not say anything. Old ancestor Golden Rock, he naturally knew him. It was just that at that time, he was still a low-rank god king. In the dragon realm, he only had the name of a genius, but did not have the actual strength of a powerhouse. Even when meeting old ancestor Golden Rock, he also regarded himself as a junior and could only listen to the teachings. Peng Fei was not angry either. He just muttered, "Brother Long, you know that my Rock clan is good at flying and that our speed is unparalleled under the heavens, so you deliberately tested me, right? We're not far from Cloudpool Mountain. Why do you have to fly so fast?" Ji Tianxing immediately revealed a smile and said indifferently, "You are thinking too much. With your current strength, what is there to test? I have already slowed down 10 times. It is enough to take care of you." Peng Fei was instantly stunned. Chapter 3582. The Cloudpool Mountain had a radius of 1,000,000 miles. The lush greenery was like the sea. Strange mountains and dangerous peaks rose and fell one after another, high and low. There seemed to be no end to them. The divine power of heaven and earth was abnormally abundant. Demonic beasts that had become gods could be seen everywhere in groups. There were also countless divine flowers and divine fruits, emitting a rich fragrance. The sky above the mountains and the sea of trees was covered in clouds all year round. Even the scorching sun at noon could not penetrate the clouds. Without a doubt, this was a blessed land with divine meridians. It was the most suitable place to establish a sect, build a cave abode, and a divine palace. The Green Lotus Domain, Lord's Manor, was in the depths of the Cloud Pool Mountain. It was a magnificent divine palace, standing at the top of the vast sea of clouds. Ji Tianxing did not specify the direction, but Peng Fei carried him straight to the depths of the Cloud Pool Mountain and arrived at the entrance of the Domain Lord's Manor. Peng Fei did not hesitate at all, nor did he take a detour. Based on this point alone, one could tell that he had indeed been to the Green Lotus Domain Lord's Manor. Swoosh! Peng Fei landed outside the entrance of the divine palace. He immediately put away the golden-winged rock and transformed back into his human form. The few divine lord guards guarding the entrance looked stern and vigilant as they looked at Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei. Before Ji Tianxing could speak, Peng Fei took the initiative to say to the guard, "Please inform the domain lord that Peng Fei, a disciple of Mount Wuhua, wishes to see the domain lord." Mount Wuhua. The two guards were stunned for a moment. After looking at each other, they knew what was going on. One of them cupped his hands and said, "Please wait for a moment. I will go and inform the domain lord." The guard's attitude and tone were filled with respect. Obviously, Peng Fei's background was not simple. Ji Tianxing waited expressionlessly, secretly observing the entire divine palace. Although he knew Lu Ming, he had never been to the Green Lotus Domain before, let alone his cave abode. After a short 100 breaths, that guard returned and bowed to Peng Fei, saying, "The region lord has agreed. Please follow me." As he spoke, the guard led Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei into the divine palace. The three of them passed through the front yard and entered the guest hall of the second courtyard. After Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei sat down, a maid immediately brought over spirit fruits and divine tea. The guard also bowed and left. After a short while, a dignified voice filled with energy entered the main hall. "Peng Fei, why are you running around instead of cultivating on Mount Wuhua?" Following this voice, a middle-aged Fei man wearing a green robe and a jade crown strode into the hall with a majestic gait. Seeing this person appear, Peng Fei quickly got up and bowed. His expression was a bit awkward as he said, "Peng Fei greets Martial Uncle." The man from the demon clan whom he addressed as Martial Uncle was the Green Lotus Domain Lord, Lu Ming. When he stepped into the main hall, Ji Tianxing recognized him. He cast a surprised glance at Peng Fei and thought to himself, "I didn't expect that this lad is indeed Lu Ming's junior nephew." Lu Ming temporarily ignored Ji Tianxing. He frowned and stared at Peng Fei, reprimanding angrily. "Peng Fei, do you know that your master has been looking for you everywhere for the past 2 years? In fact, your master even sent me a few messages, asking me to send people to search for him. Where have you been hiding? What do you want?" Peng Fei was embarrassed by the reprimand. It was not convenient for him to explain, so he could only change the topic. "Martial Uncle is right. I know my mistake. However, I'm here to visit because a friend wants to see you." As he said that, Peng Fei pointed to Ji Tianxing beside him and introduced, "Martial Uncle, this Brother Long came to the Green Lotus Domain specially to look for you." Peng Fei was halfway through the introduction when he remembered that he had not asked for Ji Tianxing's name. He was a little embarrassed. Lu Ming frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing. After seeing his face clearly, he was stunned. His expression and eyes were a little dazed. As a result, he did not hear a single word that Peng Fei said after that. Lu Ming was still in a daze, but Ji Tianxing smiled and cupped his hands at him, saying, "Brother Lu, how have you been?" Hearing this familiar voice, Lu Ming finally came back to his senses and exclaimed in disbelief, "You are Long Tian? That Long Tian from the Sky Dragon continent?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "That's right. Brother Lu's memory is not bad. You actually remember this." Lu Ming broke into laughter and said, "Ha ha ha. How can I forget this? Brother Long's performance at that exchange meeting back then could be said to be extraordinary and shocking. Even though 1,000 years have passed, I still remember it clearly. Now that I think about it, I can't help but be amazed and emotional. Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hands, saying, Brother Lu is too kind. It's all in the past. Let's not talk about it. Well, Brother Long is here this time. Lu Ming sat down at the head of the table. Just as he was about to chat with Ji Tianxing, he suddenly thought of something and his expression became very complicated. He frowned and secretly sized up Ji Tianxing. After hesitating for a while, he asked tentatively, Brother Long, have you been to the Tianxiang Empire before? Ji Tianxing was also a little surprised and asked back, I have indeed been there. How did Brother Lu know? It's nothing. Lu Ming smiled and waved his hands. He immediately suppressed his complicated emotions and said with a friendly smile, It's been 1,000 years. It's really fortunate to be able to see Brother Long again. Brother Long, why are you looking for me? Feel free to tell me. Ji Tianxing did not think too much and said directly, I do have something to ask of you. I want to find out some information from you. Lu Ming nodded and said with a bright smile, I'd like to hear the details. Ji Tianxing looked around the main hall. When he saw that there was only him, Peng Fei, and Lu Ming in the main hall, he then said, Brother Lu, to be honest, I have been in seclusion for the past 1,000 years and am not aware of the changes in the outside world. Therefore, I want to find out about the current situation of the Star Source continent from you. For example, which powerful figure is controlling the Star Source continent now? What are the super forces? Are there a few more peak god kings? Lu Ming was stunned for a moment and said with a somewhat stunned expression, Brother Long, you came all the way here to visit me just to ask about these things? Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded. Oh, this is simple. Please allow me to explain slowly. Lu Ming's expression did not change, but he did not believe it in his heart. He had a feeling that Ji Tianxing had other intentions. The overlord controlling the Star Source continent has not changed. Is still the Gold Source Dragon Emperor. There have indeed been 2 peak god kings in the past 1,000 years, and they are both peerless powerful figures. As for the super forces, they are still the 10 over Grotto Heavens and the 2 new peak god king forces. Lu Ming's tone was calm and indifferent. He spoke at a steady pace. Ji Tianxing listened attentively and nodded from time to time to express his understanding. Occasionally, he would ask a few questions. So far, both parties had a very pleasant conversation. Ji Tianxing also learned from Lu Ming that there were not many changes in the Star Source continent in the past 1,000 years. Everything was safe and sound. Chapter 3583. After getting the news and results that he wanted, Ji Tianxing was relieved. He chatted with Lu Ming for a while and asked about his recent situation. Lu Ming had not changed much. He had only broken through from the 5th level of the Divine King realm to the 6th level of the Divine King realm and reached the peak. However, he had not been able to break through to the 7th level. It was a pity. As for Ji Tianxing, he did not reveal the battle of the gods in the extraterrestrial universe and his rebirth after death. Anyway, Lu Ming did not know about these. He only thought that he had been in seclusion for 1,000 years without any breakthrough. Ji Tianxing did not think much of it. However, Lu Ming comforted him kindly. Brother Long, although you have been in seclusion for 1,000 years, you are still at the 4th level of the Divine King realm. However, this is very common. Don't be discouraged. A Divine King is at the peak of the Divine Tao. It is extremely difficult to break through to the next level. I believe that with your talent and aptitude, you will be able to break through soon after 1,000 years. Ji Tianxing only smiled and nodded. He did not say much. Peng Fei sat by the side and watched the two of them chatting happily. He was also full of smiles. While Ji Tianxing was drinking tea, he sent a voice transmission at the right time. Brother Long, I didn't expect you to be an old acquaintance of my martial uncle. Should I call you Senior then? By the way, Senior, you won't go back on your promise to me, right? Ji Tianxing glanced at him and sent a voice transmission in confusion. What did I promise you? Peng Fei was stunned for a moment and hurriedly explained. Didn't we agree previously? If I am really the junior nephew of the Region Lord, you will cooperate with me and explore the mystic realm in the benevolent region. Ji Tianxing frowned and said indifferently, I didn't promise you. This is just your wishful thinking. Peng Fei was deflated again. He looked a little depressed. Next, Ji Tianxing chatted with Lu Ming for a while more. He then bowed and thanked him, preparing to get up and leave. Brother Lu, sorry for disturbing you today. Thank you for telling me these. I still have things to do, so I won't disturb you any longer. See you again. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was about to leave, Lu Ming quickly stood up and tried to persuade him to stay. Brother Long, you just sat down. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? You and I regret that we didn't meet earlier. We're like brothers. After 1,000 years, we finally meet again. How can we leave just like that? In any case, you must stay here for a few days so that I may play host to you. No matter how busy you are, it can't be that you don't even have a few days, right? Besides Lu Ming, Peng Fei also tried to dissuade him. Ji Tianxing found it hard to refuse such hospitality, so he could only agree to stay for a few days. After all, he had come to seek Lu Ming's help. It would be unreasonable and rude of him to leave after obtaining the information he wanted. Seeing that Ji Tianxing had agreed to stay, Lu Ming then revealed a smile. Brother Long has been running around and must be mentally exhausted. I'll get someone to arrange accommodation for you now. You can rest for 2 days, then I'll set up a banquet to entertain you. With that, Lu Ming summoned his assistant, Moon Hawk Divine King, and asked him to help Ji Tianxing settle down. While Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei were not paying attention, he secretly winked at Moonhawk Divine King. Moonhawk God King understood tacitly and brought Ji Tianxing to the 4th layer, where they settled down in a palace. There were not only dozens of guards in the palace, but there were also dozens of maids. Even Moonhawk Divine King stayed in the house next door. He said that he wanted to entertain Ji Tianxing well so that he would not neglect him. If Ji Tianxing had any needs or instructions, he could look for him at any time. He just had to inform him. Seeing that Moonhawk Divine King was so polite, even if Ji Tianxing felt that it was inappropriate, he could not say anything. In addition, Peng Fei also followed Ji Tianxing into the palace. After settling Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei, the domain master's manner finally quieted down. Seeing that Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei had entered the secret chamber to recuperate, Moonhawk Divine King then left and went to Lu Ming's study. Lu Ming was already waiting in the study. He sat alone on the wooden armchair, frowning as he pondered. Moonhawk Divine King entered the study and closed the door behind him. He then shot out a beam of divine light to activate the defense divine array. This divine array could isolate the probing of divine senses, ensuring that their conversation would not be overheard. Have you settled down? Lu Ming looked at Moonhawk Divine King and asked expressionlessly. At this moment, he was no longer as candid and kind as before. Moonhawk Divine King nodded and said in a low voice, he has not been suspicious. He has already settled down and entered the secret chamber to meditate. That's good. Lu Ming nodded slightly, fiddling with a communication jade slip. The Emperor of Tianxiang will arrive in 2 days. Keep a close eye on him. Don't let him suspect anything. Understood. Moonhawk Divine King cupped his fists and bowed. After hesitating for a moment, he asked worriedly, Lord Domain Master, this person is after all a peerless genius famous throughout the 5 continents. His strength and methods are very powerful. If we really get into a conflict, do you think the 2 of us will be able to stop him? Lu Ming waved his hand and consoled. Back then, he was a peerless genius whose name shook the world, but that's all in the past. For nearly 1,000 years, he has been cultivating in seclusion but has not been able to break through. This means that his talent has been exhausted and he is no longer a divine Tao genius. He has even become mediocre. At that time, he was at the 4th degree realm and I was at the 5th degree realm, so he could defeat me. But now he is still at the 4th degree realm and I have reached the peak of the 6th degree realm. If we fight again, I have absolute confidence that I can defeat him. Moonhawk Divine King heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. That's good. Besides, we have the advantage. He will definitely not be on guard against us. Lu Ming frowned and said in a complicated tone, "Why does it sound like we are going to plot against him? It's not that serious. We just want him to confront Emperor Tianxiang so we can investigate this matter thoroughly. As the domain master, I can't sit by and do nothing when my subordinates come crying to me when they are in trouble. However, Long Tian's identity and background are special. I can help them mediate and resolve their hatred, but I can't punish Long Tian. If Emperor Tian Myriad wants to pay with his life, that's wishful thinking." Moonhawk Divine King thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. He nodded and sighed. Long Tian is the dragon race's divine king with a noble bloodline. Xian Yu is just a Tian Myriad with a mediocre bloodline. Even if she is the little princess of the Tian Myriad Empire, she can't be compared to the dragon race's divine king. So be it. As long as we can find out the reason and get Long Tian to apologize to Emperor Tian Myriad, this matter will be considered over. Lu Ming nodded and said in a calm tone, "With my strength and face, it's not difficult to get Long Tian to apologize. If Emperor Tian Myriad still can't figure it out, then get Long Tian to compensate appropriately. This is all I can do." Chapter 3584. For the past 30,000 years, the Dragon Realm had been peaceful and peaceful. There had been no turmoil or chaos. Tens of thousands of demon clans lived in peace. They were of equal status and seemed to be harmonious. However, this was just a facade. The difference between bloodlines was too deeply ingrained in people's hearts, and it had long been ingrained in them. For example, the dragon, Phoenix, Kylan, and the four sacred beasts had extremely noble bloodlines and were of extraordinary status. As long as they did not do anything outrageous, no one dared to punish them. Even if they made mistakes, only the clans of equal status could restrain and judge them. As for the 7 ancestors of the demon clan, they were also recognized as aristocrats in the dragon realm. Although they did not have extraordinary status like the dragons and phoenixes, they had many privileges. Therefore, the death of the little princess of Tian Myriad was not a big deal to Lu Ming. It was only because he was a benevolent territorial lord that he helped the emperor of Tian Myriad to mediate. If it were other territorial lords, they would not be bothered. They would never offend a divine king of the dragon clan for the sake of the princess of the Tian Myriad. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 days, Ji Tianxing stayed in the secret chamber and cultivated in the distorted space-time of the divine pagoda. He had reached the late stage of the 4th divine king realm and was not far from the 5th. During this period, Peng Fei came to look for him twice, but did not manage to meet him. Peng Fei still did not give up. He wanted to persuade him to join forces and explore the divine dragon mystic realm in the Tianren domain. In the early morning of the 3rd day, the sky was still dark. A flying boat came from the sky and arrived at the main gate of the territorial lord manor at lightning speed. After the flying boat was put away, a burly man from the Tian Myriad clan with a divine crown on his head hurried into the territorial lord manor with 2 high-level divine lords. There was no doubt that it was the emperor of Tian Myriad and the 2 commanders of the imperial guards. They were both high-level divine lords of the 8th stage. Under the guidance of the guards, the 3 of them came to the 2nd courtyard of the territorial lord manor and entered Lu Ming's study. Lu Ming sat alone in the study, waiting expressionlessly. After the emperor of Tian Myriad entered the study and bowed to Lu Ming, he complained about Long Tian's crime with a look of grief and indignation. "Sir Domain Lord, you must uphold justice for this subordinate. That Long Tian's origin is unknown. He ruined my daughter's martial arts competition and even heavily injured the marshal's son. My daughter was merciful and pleaded with the marshal on his behalf, calming down the marshal's anger. Who would have thought that not only did Long Tian not thank him, he even killed his daughter? So what if he was a noble dragon? How could he do such a crazy thing?" The emperor of Tian Myriad's sovereign was filled with grief and indignation as he complained tearfully. Lu Ming frowned when he heard that. He said in a stern tone, "I don't want to hear you wailing here. This is of no help to the investigation of the truth. If you want me to uphold justice, then tell me the cause of the matter from beginning to end." In the jade slip, Emperor Tian Myriad's explanation was simple. Lu Ming only knew that the little princess of Tianxiang had been killed by Long Tian, but he did not know the specific reason. Therefore, when he saw Ji Tianxing, he could only bear with it for the time being and did not ask anything. After being reprimanded, Emperor Tian Myriad finally calmed down and recounted the whole story in detail. After hearing that, Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He shouted coldly, "Xiang Jioga, your daughter is really unruly and willful. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. Long Tian is not only the divine king of the dragon race, but he was also once a peerless genius with a strong background. Your daughter, a mere princess of the Tian Myriad sovereign race, actually wanted to marry him? She even put him under house arrest in the palace? To put it bluntly, your daughter only has herself to blame." Emperor Tian Myriad's sovereign was stunned on the spot. He was filled with indignation as he muttered to himself. But even if Long Tian looked down on my daughter, he shouldn't have killed her so cruelly. When the maidservant found my daughter, she had died in a very miserable and pitiful state. Long Tian had already fled. Lu Ming frowned and thought for a while. He said in a low voice, "These are your one-sided words. It's not to be believed. I don't believe that Long Tian would kill Xiang Yu so cruelly because of her pestering. Long Tian happens to be in my residence. I'll summon him over later so that you can confront him face to face. You must find out the truth today. If Long Tian is really the one who killed Xiang Yu, I can pressure him and force him to apologize. But as for other requests, don't be delusional." Emperor Tian Myriad's body stiffened. His expression was ugly, and there was a flash of humiliation and indignation in his eyes. He could not accept that his most beloved daughter had been killed in exchange for an apology from the murderer. This was unfair. However, he had no right to complain. Lu Ming was willing to help him find out the truth and force Long Tian to admit his guilt and apologize. This was already a favor. After a moment of silence, Emperor Tian Myriad could only nod and agree. He bowed and said, "Thank you, territorial lord." Lu Ming did not say anything else. He gestured for Divine King Yueying to invite Ji Tianxing over. At the same time, he led Emperor Tian Myriad to the conference hall. Ji Tianxing was still cultivating in the divine pagoda, focusing on comprehending the heaven-punishing divine art. However, someone kept knocking on the door of the secret chamber, and the rhythm was more urgent. Knowing that something had happened, Ji Tianxing could only end his cultivation and walk out of the secret chamber. Yueying Divine King stood at the door of the secret chamber and bowed. "Brother Long, the territorial lord invites you to the conference hall. He has something to discuss." Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion, wondering what was so serious. However, since Yueying Divine King did not reveal, he did not ask either. He followed Yueying Divine King out of the palace and walked towards the conference hall. Coincidentally, Peng Fei was strolling outside. When he saw the two of them, he hurriedly followed. "Senior Long Tian, where are you guys going?" Ji Tianxing smiled and replied casually, "Your uncle master has something urgent to discuss with me. We're going to the conference hall to discuss it." Peng Fei was full of doubts and asked Yueying Divine King, "Why are we going to the conference hall for no reason? What's so serious? Senior Yueying, can you tell us?" Yueying Divine King glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "Young Master Peng Fei, you'd better not ask too much." Seeing his serious expression, Peng Fei and Ji Tianxing both realized that something was amiss. True enough, as soon as the three of them entered the conference hall, they sensed a solemn and oppressive atmosphere. More than 10 divine Lord Realm guards guarded the entrance and passageway of the conference hall. In the middle of the hall, Emperor Tian Myriad stood with his hands by his side, looking sorrowful and angry. The two Imperial Guard commanders stood behind him, looking as if they had a common enemy. Lu Ming sat at the head of the table, expressionless and solemn. He was a completely different person from his previous warm, hospitable, and amiable self. Yueying Divine King walked into the hall and cupped his fists. "Lord Domain Lord, I've brought Long Tian here. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing frowned, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. From your tone, are you going to judge me? Or are you going to give some orders? Lu Ming, have you been acting with me all this while? Before Lu Ming could say anything, the Emperor of Tian Myriad Phenomenon turned around and glared at him with bloodshot eyes. Long Tian, you crazy bastard. Ji Tianxing was stunned. His face was full of question marks. Book Guest Residence Reading Website. Chapter 3585. Even though the celestial phenomenon emperor's face was filled with grief and indignation, his eyes were bloodshot with hatred. However, Ji Tianxing didn't know him. It was the first time they met, and the other party scolded him for being crazy. Anyone would be stunned. He ignored the emperor of Tian Myriad and looked at Lu Ming expressionlessly. Lu Ming, what do you mean by this? Lu Ming looked serious and said in a low voice, This is the emperor of Tian Myriad Empire. You stayed in Tian Myriad for a few days and even went to the palace, right? That's right. Ji Tianxing didn't deny it. Lu Ming continued, I heard that you ruined Tian Myriad's little princess's martial arts competition and was pestered by her. She brought you back to the palace for 2 days, and you couldn't stand her pestering and pursuit, so you killed her. Am I right? What? Ji Tianxing was taken aback. His face was filled with astonishment. Tian Myriad's little princess was killed. Yes. Lu Ming nodded expressionlessly. You were the last person she saw. Not long after you left, the maid found out that she was killed. She died a horrible death. That's impossible. Ji Tianxing finally understood. No wonder the emperor of Tian Myriad looked so aggrieved. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. He denied it. Seeing that he refused to admit it, the emperor of Tian Myriad sneered. Long Tian, stop acting. That's the palace. Other than you, who would dare to kill my daughter? I admit that Xiangyu is young and insensible. She did have a thought of keeping you and marrying you. But I've warned Xiangyu that she will not force you to do anything. She was just expressing her feelings for you. Even if you didn't agree, you shouldn't have killed her so cruelly. Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered silently. However, he couldn't figure it out. This matter was too sudden and completely out of his expectations. Although he used the power of his soul to knock Xiangyu out when he left Tian Myriad's palace, Xiangyu wasn't injured. However, Xiangyu did not suffer any actual injuries. She would wake up in 2 hours at most. He could not think of anyone in the palace who would take the opportunity to kill Xiangyu. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was silent, Lu Ming frowned and asked in a low voice, Long Tian, did you do this? If you really killed Xiangyu, I hope that you can give a reasonable explanation and apologize to the emperor of Tianxiang. Without waiting for Lu Ming to finish his words, Ji Tianxing shook his head. His expression was firm and his tone was sonorous. This has nothing to do with me. I didn't kill him. Xiangyu did express her feelings towards me and try to persuade me to stay, but I rejected her every time. In order to thank her for helping me pacify the marshal's mansion, I left her a king-tier battle axe as a thank you gift and left. What happened after that has nothing to do with me. I don't know anything about it. Is this true? Lu Ming frowned doubtfully and questioned. Ji Tianxing nodded and said solemnly, It's true. Lu Ming fell silent and stared at him for a long time. He had an answer in his heart. However, the emperor of Tianxiang refused to believe him. He pointed at Ji Tianxing and sneered. Long Tian, even if you're lying, there should be a limit. How can you blatantly make things up? You used a king-tier battle axe as a thank you gift to thank Xiangyu for helping you out? Ha ha! When the palace maids entered the living room and saw Xiangyu's corpse, there was no battle axe at all. With that, the emperor of Tianxiang bowed to Lu Ming and said in a mournful tone, Lord, please investigate this. Long Tian is lying. After Xiangyu was killed, her spatial ring was intact on her finger. There was no king-tier battle axe in it. Oh, Ji Tianxing frowned, a glint flashing in his eyes. He suddenly found a breakthrough and vaguely understood something. Lu Ming also noticed this and asked in a low voice with a serious expression, Did you give her a king-tier battle axe or not? Yes. No. Ji Tianxing and the emperor of Tianxiang answered in unison, but their answers were completely different. Lu Ming frowned and said in a serious tone, "Since both of you insist on your words, it seems that this should be a breakthrough in the investigation." Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. The Emperor of Tianxiang was filled with resentment. He cupped his hands and said, "Lord, this is obviously a lie made up by Long Tian. He is the one who killed Xiangyu." Without waiting for him to finish, Lu Ming looked at him with a sharp gaze and shouted in a low voice, "Xiang Jioga, don't forget your identity. I will uphold justice for you and investigate the truth. Of course, it has to be fair. Don't tell me you want me to help you judge and punish Long Tian." The Emperor of Tianxiang's expression stiffened, and he quickly bowed to apologize. "Lord, please calm down. I wouldn't dare." Lu Ming retracted his cold gaze and ordered in a serious tone, "Since there are doubts, why don't we go to the capital of Tianxiang personally and investigate carefully? Long Tian, Xiang Jioga, do you have any objections?" Ji Tianxing naturally agreed. The Emperor of Tianxiang wanted to object, but he couldn't muster up the courage and could only acquiesce. Therefore, Lu Ming got up and walked out of the hall, instructing the Moonhawk King, "Stay at the Domain Master's mansion and wait for my orders. I will make a trip to the capital of Tianxiang." "Yes." The Moonhawk King nodded and hurriedly sent everyone away. Soon, Lu Ming left the Domain Master's mansion with Ji Tianxing, the Emperor of Tianxiang, and 2 commanders of the Imperial Guards. Lu Ming took out a divine battleship. He led everyone onto the divine battleship and wanted to leave. He didn't expect Peng Fei to follow them into the divine warship. Lu Ming frowned and tried to dissuade him, but Peng Fei insisted on following. Lu Ming didn't want to waste time and could only let him be. Swoosh! The divine warship closed the cabin door and flew high into the sky, rushing to the Tianxiang Empire at lightning speed. Lu Ming's divine warship was a king-level middle-grade divine weapon. It traveled at an extremely fast speed. In just 2 days, the divine warship arrived at the capital of the Tianxiang Empire and landed in the palace. Divine light flashed, and Lu Ming put away the divine warship. Everyone landed and appeared in the palace. Time was tight, and the Emperor of Tianxiang didn't hold any ceremony to welcome Lu Ming. Moreover, Lu Ming kept a low profile and didn't want to attract attention. Therefore, the Emperor of Tianxiang and the 2 commanders of the Imperial Guards led everyone to the scene of the incident. On the way, Ji Tianxing looked at the palace around him and sighed his heart. "I thought I would never come back in this lifetime after passing by this place. I didn't expect to come back here after leaving for just a few days. It's probably that inferior-level divine axe that killed Xiangyu." Although he didn't have much of an impression of Xiangyu. He didn't like her, but he didn't hate her either. She was just a passerby in his long life and shouldn't have caused any ripples. But now that Xiangyu had been killed, it would definitely delay him for a while. It would also add some ripples to his peaceful journey to the Dragon Realm. Of course, even if he could turn back time, he would still reject Xiangyu decisively and not stay in the capital of Tianxiang. Chapter 3586. Soon, everyone arrived at the scene of the incident, Cloud Palace. Because of Xiangyu's death, Cloud Palace was heavily surrounded by the Imperial Guards. The guards and maids in Cloud Palace were also arrested and placed under strict surveillance, awaiting interrogation at any time. Lu Ming, Ji Tianxing, and the rest walked into Cloud Palace and stood in the courtyard outside the living room. Emperor Tianxiang pointed to the living room 100 steps away and took the initiative to introduce, "Lord, that is where my daughter was killed." Lu Ming nodded and released his divine senses to cover the entire Cloud Palace, searching for any abnormalities. That living room was the main target of his search. Xiangyu's body had long been carried away and kept carefully. However, there were still bloodstains on the floor of the living room, still exuding a faint divine power. Unfortunately, Lu Ming did not find any useful clues after searching for a long time. Therefore, he turned to look at Emperor Tianxiang and instructed, "Bring Xiangyu's body here. I want to check it. Perhaps I will find something." Emperor Tianxiang hesitated and was about to nod in agreement. However, Ji Tianxing waved his hands and said, "No need." Lu Ming and Emperor Tianxiang turned to look at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Ji Tianxing said calmly. If the culprit could be identified from Xiang Yu's injuries, then the culprit would be too stupid. Emperor Tian Xiang frowned and sneered. Long Tian, you don't dare to look at my daughter's body because you are guilty and don't dare to face her? Or are you deliberately trying to hide something? Lu Ming frowned and asked Ji Tianxing, besides checking Xiang Yu's body, what other methods do you have to prove your innocence? Ji Tianxing said with certainty, that day, after I left, someone else came. It turned out that when Lu Ming used his divine senses to check on Cloud Palace, he was also using his special ability to check on the situation in Cloud Palace. He used his special ability to turn back time to check on the situation in Cloud Palace on the day he left. Although it had been a few days, and even with the special ability, the clues he found were very vague. However, he clearly found that after he left, someone did enter the living room. Unfortunately, he was unable to detect that person's strength, nor could he discern his appearance or race. Are you sure? Lu Ming's eyes lit up with anticipation. Ji Tianxing nodded in confirmation. Summon all the guards and maids of the cloud-moving palace and interrogate them. We'll know everything. Emperor Tian Xiang frowned as if he wanted to say something, but he remained silent. Following Ji Tianxing's suggestion, Lu Ming instructed the Emperor of Tian Xiang, bring the guards and maids here. Tian Xiang's emperor acknowledged the order and waved his hand at the two imperial guards. Not long after, two imperial guard commanders escorted more than 20 guards and maids to the courtyard. These guards and maids were all trembling with fear, lowering their heads in fear. When they arrived at the courtyard, there was no need for anyone to speak. They all knelt on the ground in fear and trepidation, not even daring to breathe loudly. Lu Ming released a powerful soul suppression, shrouding all the guards and maids. He asked in a deep voice, on the day of the incident, after Long Tian left the Cloud Palace, who else came? The guards and maids were already terrified. Shrouded by his soul suppression, they were all scared out of their wits. All of them lay on the ground with ashen faces, shivering like sieves. Many people shook their heads, indicating that they did not know. However, two guards from the Bear Clan said in a trembling voice, it's the State Preceptor. The State Preceptor came. Lu Ming got the answer he wanted. He waved his hand, indicating for the other guards and maids to leave. Leaving only the two guards from the Bear Clan, Lu Ming asked again, tell me, why did the State Preceptor come? Why didn't he enter the living room? This time, without waiting for the two guards to answer, Emperor Tian Xiang took the initiative to explain, Lord Territorial Lord, the State Preceptor taught Xiang Yu cultivation. The relationship between the master and disciple was very harmonious. According to the usual practice, the State Preceptor taught Xiang Yu that day to clear her doubts. The State Preceptor has explained this to me before. I believe that this matter has nothing to do with the State Preceptor. In Emperor Tian Xiang's opinion, anyone could have killed Xiang Yu except for the State Preceptor. The State Preceptor was a highly respected senior. He had an upright character, and there was nothing to criticize about him for thousands of years. Moreover, the State Preceptor was loyal to the Tian Xiang Empire and doted on Xiang Yu a lot. However, Lu Ming did not care about this. He glanced at Emperor Tian Xiang and said expressionlessly, you knew that the State Preceptor came. Why didn't you say so earlier? No matter how much you trust the State Preceptor, he did enter the Cloud Palace after Long Tian left and before Xiang Yu was killed. Therefore, he is the most suspicious. No. Emperor Tian Xiang hurriedly waved his hands, exonerating the State Preceptor. Lord Territorial Lord, I believe in the State Preceptor. All the people in the capital know the State Preceptor's character. He would never, before he could finish, Lu Ming interrupted him and continued to interrogate the two guards from the Bear Clan. Did the State Preceptor enter the living room? The two guards from the Bear Clan hesitated for a moment before answering fearfully, yes. Lu Ming continued to ask, how long did he go in? When did he leave? Did he say anything? The two guards from the Bear Clan hurriedly shook their heads and said fearfully, we don't know. We didn't know when the State Preceptor left. It was only when the maid, Ah Hong, found out that the princess was killed that we. Hearing this, Lu Ming and Ji Tianqing already had an answer in their hearts. However, Emperor Tianxiang was stubborn and said firmly, "Lord Territorial Lord, you shouldn't be distracted by Long Tian. How could the state preceptor kill Xiangyu?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "It's useless even if you believe it. The most important thing now is to find out the truth and find out the cause of Xiangyu's death. When I left, Xiangyu was safe and sound." Then, the state preceptor entered the Cloud Palace. If Xiangyu was already dead, the state preceptor would definitely report it to you. However, he didn't. This means that Xiangyu is still alive. However, the guards only saw the state preceptor enter the Cloud Palace. They didn't know when he left. Then a maid found out that Xiangyu was killed. At this point, Ji Tianqing stared at Emperor Tianxiang and said indifferently, "Emperor Tianxiang, I've already sorted out the sequence of events very clearly. It's obvious who the real murderer is." Emperor Tianxiang was speechless. No matter how much he trusted the state preceptor, he couldn't refute the facts. Lu Ming didn't waste any time and directly ordered, "Bring the state preceptor here. I'll interrogate him personally." Emperor Tianxiang was full of hesitation and was in a dilemma. However, he didn't dare to disobey Lu Ming's order. He could only let the Imperial Guard commander pass the message. Everyone stood in the courtyard and waited quietly. Taking this opportunity, Lu Ming secretly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. "Brother Long, how did you know that someone came to the Cloud Palace after you left? Could it be that you've mastered the divine power of time and can turn back time to see what happened a few days ago?" Ji Tianqing smiled and didn't say anything. Lu Ming had an answer in his heart. His eyes flashed with surprise. Chapter 3587. Time was one of the most mysterious and difficult to control forces in the world. Only a peak divine king could control time. For example, time could be stopped, accelerated, or reversed. But it was only for a short period of time. Previously, Lu Ming had thought that Ji Tianqing was still a middle-level divine king and had not improved much compared to 1,000 years ago. In other words, this was a fallen genius who had faded into the crowd. But at this moment, Lu Ming suddenly realized that things were different from what he had imagined. Not long after, the state preceptor was brought in by 2 Imperial Guard commanders. This was a 9th-degree realm high-level divine lord. From his appearance, one could tell that he was an honest and benevolent elder from the Tianxiang clan. Just like what the Tianxiang emperor had said, such a sanctimonious elder was definitely of noble character and dignified behavior. In addition, he was Xiangyu's master. No one would believe that he would kill Xiangyu with his own hands. "Greetings to the Lord and His Majesty." The state preceptor came to the courtyard and stood still, bowing to Lu Ming and the Tianxiang emperor. Lu Ming's expression was stern as he looked at him coldly. He secretly exerted soul suppression and asked, "State preceptor, you came here after Long Tianqing left the Cloud Palace. Let me ask you, why did you come to the Cloud Palace?" The state preceptor bowed and replied calmly, "As usual, once every 10 days to teach the little princess cultivation." Lu Ming asked again, "When you entered the living room, what was Xiangyu doing? Have you seen a king-level battle axe?" The state preceptor hesitated for a moment, his eyes a little blank. But it was only for a moment before he replied calmly. At that time, the little princess had already been killed and was lying in a pool of blood. As for the king-level battle axe, I have not seen it. The Tianxiang emperor heaved a sigh of relief, while Lu Ming frowned. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's expression did not change, but a cold smile flashed across his eyes. Lu Ming asked again, "Since you saw the little princess being killed, why didn't you report it to the emperor? Also, when did you leave? Why did the guards and maids of the Cloud Palace only see you come in, but no one saw you leave?" This old official. The imperial tutor hesitated for a moment before answering. This old official's mind was in a mess at that time. "I didn't know what to do, but I didn't dare to say anything and could only leave quietly. After all, I would never have thought that the little princess would be killed in the palace. This matter is of great importance, so I don't dare to make it public to avoid causing panic. But who would have thought that not long after I left, before I could report to His Majesty. The maids of Cloud Palace would find out. Although this reason was a little far-fetched, it was not unreasonable. For a moment, Lu Ming was at a loss for words. He did not know how to continue the interrogation. The scene was silent, and the atmosphere was somewhat stiff. Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. He stared at the Imperial Preceptor and secretly cast a soul-secret technique. He asked in a low voice, "Imperial Preceptor, you're lying?" When you entered the living room, Xiang Yu was completely unharmed. She had only fainted and collapsed on the ground. In order to get rid of her entanglement, I used the power of my divine sense to knock her unconscious. And that crimson battle axe was placed on the jade table in the living room at that time. Upon hearing this, the Imperial Preceptor suddenly raised his head and glared at Ji Tianxing with hatred. He sneered and said, "Nonsense. You're the one who fabricated all these." Although he appeared to be very angry. But Ji Tianxing discovered that there was a hint of confusion and uneasiness in the depths of his eyes. Without a doubt, the Imperial Preceptor was guilty and confused. Such a complicated and subtle change in his gaze was naturally not noticed by the Emperor of Tian Dao, the Imperial Guard Commander, Peng Fei, and the rest. But Ji Tianxing saw it clearly, and Lu Ming noticed it as well. Ji Tianxing continued, "Originally, you came to teach Xiang Yu cultivation as usual. You didn't have any ill intentions, so you came openly and were seen by the two bear guards. But when you entered the living room, you discovered that Xiang Yu had fainted and there was a king-level divine weapon on the table. It was that king-level divine weapon that aroused your greed and made you want to kill her. You coveted that battle axe and were afraid that Xiang Yu would be exposed when she woke up, so you killed her. Then, you took the battle axe and quietly escaped from the Cloud Palace. This is the truth." The Imperial Preceptor was stunned on the spot. On the surface, he looked angry and disdainful. But in the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of realization and uneasiness. "Bullsh asterisk T. You're slandering me. You're slandering me." The Imperial Preceptor came back to his senses and blamed Ji Tianxing angrily. Emperor of Tian Dao was also filled with indignation. He said to Lu Ming, "Lord, you saw it with your own eyes. Long Tian is spouting nonsense, fabricating and slandering the Imperial Preceptor. He did this to clear his name and shift the blame to the Imperial Preceptor." Lu Ming did not express his opinion. He took a deep look at Ji Tianxing before saying, "Search the Imperial Preceptor. Check his interspatial ring and his residence. As long as we find that king-level battle axe, the truth will be revealed." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly in agreement. Emperor of Tian Dao was a little hesitant, but the Imperial Preceptor straightened his neck and said, "Search. Go ahead and search. I have a clear conscience. I'm not afraid of you searching." Next, Lu Ming personally searched the Imperial Preceptor's body and checked his interspatial ring. Emperor of Tian Dao led a large group of Imperial Guards. Under the supervision of Lu Ming and Ji Tianxing, they searched the palace where the Imperial Preceptor lived. Under the divine senses of the two God Kings, everything in the Imperial Preceptor's residence was investigated clearly. Not even a speck of dust was left behind. However, after busying themselves for an hour, they still ended up empty-handed. That king-level battle axe was nowhere to be seen. Ji Tianxing fell silent instantly, frowning as he pondered. Emperor of Tian Dao was relieved. The Imperial Preceptor was smug as he sneered. "Long Tian, what else do you have to say now? You're the real culprit, but you want to shift the blame to me? No way." Lu Ming did not express his opinion. He looked at Ji Tianxing and asked secretly through voice transmission, "Brother Long, do you have any other ideas?" Ji Tianxing replied through voice transmission, "At present, it seems that the Imperial Preceptor has been cleared of suspicion, but I'm still certain that he's the culprit." After pausing for a moment, he said in a serious tone, "However, I have a bold idea. He's actually just an accomplice. The real culprit is someone else." "Oh." Lu Ming was stunned for a moment and said in a strange tone, "Brother Long, why am I confused by you?" Ji Tianxing continued to explain, Then let's put it in simpler terms. The Imperial Preceptor had no intention of killing Xiangyu, but he was possessed by a God-King powerhouse. This, Lu Ming hesitated. He pondered in his heart, unable to make a judgment. Ji Tianqing added, I believe you saw it just now. The Imperial Preceptor's gaze is problematic. He's obviously guilty. However, while he's guilty and fearful, he's also at a loss. This means that he knows that he killed Xiangyu, but he doesn't remember what happened. I'm guessing that the person who possessed him made use of his identity to kill Xiangyu and snatch the king-level battle axe. Chapter 3588. This, Lu Ming was silent for a moment, not knowing what to say. He carefully recalled the look in the State Preceptor's eyes and frowned for a while before saying with a bitter smile, Brother Long, this is really a bold guess. He felt that Ji Tianqing's guess was a little shocking and even whimsical, but he had to admit that there might be such a possibility. After all, he could see that there was indeed something wrong with the State Preceptor. At this time, the State Preceptor and Emperor of Tian Phenomenon saw that Ji Tianqing and Lu Ming were silent and took the initiative to speak. Sir Governor, the truth has already surfaced. Long Tian is the real murderer. I implore your excellency to uphold justice for this subordinate and give my daughter justice. Sir Governor, Long Tian's slandering words are really clumsy. Given your great talent, you can't possibly believe it, right? Hearing the State Preceptor and Emperor of Tian Phenomenon chiming in, Peng Fei, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. No matter what, I believe that Senior Long Tian would never kill Xiangyu. If an expert with such a noble status like him really killed a nobody, would he waste his time and effort coming here to prove his innocence? Emperor of Tian Phenomenon and the State Preceptor instantly glared at him. If not for the fact that he came with Lu Ming, they would have chased Peng Fei away. Lu Ming finally made up his mind. He looked at the State Preceptor and Emperor of Tian Phenomenon with a solemn expression and said in a dignified tone, There are still some suspicious points in this matter. The truth has yet to be clarified. Don't be anxious. Huh? Sir Governor, you can't believe Long Tian's lies. The State Preceptor and Emperor of Tian Phenomenon's expression changed instantly. They were filled with anxiety. Lu Ming ignored them and continued to discuss countermeasures with Ji Tianqing through voice transmission. Brother Long, since you think that a God King powerhouse has taken over the State Preceptor's body and caused this incident, then do you have any way to find clues related to that God King? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and replied, I can use the soul-searching technique to check the State Preceptor's soul memory. Maybe I can find some clues. Lu Ming frowned and said, Soul-searching technique? Wouldn't it be very harmful to the soul? With the attitude of the Imperial Preceptor and the Emperor of Tianxiang, how could they cooperate with you? Furthermore, after the deity king possessed the Imperial Preceptor and stole the king-grade battle axe, he erased all memories related to it. He must have escaped long ago. No matter what, I still want to try. Ji Tianqing's attitude was very firm. This, Lu Ming hesitated for a moment before he nodded. All right, we'll do as you say. Ji Tianqing no longer hesitated. He turned around and stared at the Imperial advisor. His eyes turned dark gold as they stared at each other. Just as the Imperial Preceptor realized that something was wrong and was about to close his eyes, Ji Tianqing had already used the soul-searching divine technique and invaded his divine soul. Shua, formless spiritual power, forced its way into the Imperial advisor's spiritual soul and read his memories. The Imperial Preceptor could not bear the pain of his divine soul being torn apart. His whole body convulsed, and he screamed in pain a few times before he fainted. The Emperor of Tian Myriad Kingdom rushed towards Ji Tianqing in a fit of rage, wanting to stop him. Long Tian, you scoundrel, what are you doing? Not only did you kill my daughter, but you also want to kill the Imperial Preceptor in public? The Emperor of Tian Myriad Sovereign roared furiously. However, he was stopped by Lu Ming as soon as he took a step forward. The Emperor of Tian Myriad Sovereign was even more indignant. He questioned with a voice full of grievances, Lord, Long Tian distorted the truth and slandered the Imperial Preceptor. He even wanted to kill the imperial preceptor in public. Are you going to sit back and do nothing? Lu Ming said expressionlessly. He's just investigating the truth. Seeing his attitude, the emperor of Tian Myriad Sovereign knew that he supported Ji Tianxing. He was even more indignant and aggrieved. However, he was not so angry that he lost his rationality. No matter what, he did not dare to resist. Very soon, 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianxing ended his spell casting and withdrew his spiritual power. The imperial preceptor was still unconscious and had fallen asleep on the ground. The emperor of Tian Myriad Sovereign hurriedly checked on him. Seeing that his life was not in danger, he heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ming looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "How is it? Have you found any clues?" Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and said with a serious expression, "As you expected, the memories of that godly king expert have all been deleted. However, from these traces, we can still conclude a few clues." Lu Ming was a little disappointed and his eyes dimmed. Peng Fei stared at Ji Tianxing expectantly. He was guessing and analyzing Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming's plan. After all, the two of them had communicated through voice transmission previously, and Peng Fei did not know. Ji Tianxing said seriously, "First, that God King strength is not too strong or too weak. You should be a middle-level God King. Second, as early as 10 days ago, the Imperial Preceptor was possessed by that God King. Third, on the day Xian Yu was killed and the King-level battle axe was stolen, that God King escaped." Lu Ming nodded and said in a complicated tone, "Although these 3 points can be confirmed and can be considered as part of the clues, we still have no clue. But we still have no clue. How can we find that deity king?" After hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Peng Fei, who was at the side, immediately understood what he meant. He seemed to have thought of something and instantly revealed a thoughtful expression. Ji Tianxing asked Lu Ming, "It's not easy to meet a God King powerhouse. As the Lord of Domain, you should know which God King came to the Green Lotus region during this period, right?" This, Lu Ming revealed a helpless and bitter smile and spread his hands. "The Green Lotus region is so big, and I have been staying in the Domain Chief's manor. How would I know? Unless the other party appeared in an empire and did something, my subordinates would only report it." Ji Tianxing's expression dimmed. He sighed and said, "If that's the case, then it will be difficult to find a real culprit." Lu Ming nodded in agreement and could only sigh helplessly. Since they could not find a real culprit, they could not give Tian Xiang Emperor an explanation. Lu Ming's and Ji Tianxing's expressions did not look too good. At this moment, Peng Fei suddenly interjected, "Uncle Master, Senior Long Tian, I know of a God King who appeared in the Green Lotus region recently." Upon hearing this, Ji Tianxing's and Lu Ming's eyes lit up. "Who is it?" the two of them asked in unison. Peng Fei smiled and said, "The Heavenly Wolf King of the Tianren region. Uncle Master, you should know him." "Of course I know him." Lu Ming nodded without hesitation and explained, "This person is one of the 4 God Kings of the Tianren region. However, his character and reputation are extremely bad. He is the most ferocious and overbearing one. He is a middle-level God King, and his strength is second only to the Domain Chief and Deputy Chief. He has been in the Tianren region for tens of thousands of years and has established a very powerful force. That force covers 7 empires and has thousands of elite experts. In the Tianren region, he is considered to be able to cover the sky with one hand. Moreover, the Heavenly Wolf King is greedy and bloodthirsty. He is violent and perverse. The force that he established commits all kinds of evil. He wantonly plunders and snatches the resources and wealth of the Tianren region, seriously threatening the position of the chief of the Tianren region." Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3589. In the past few thousand years, the Tianren Domain Lord could still tolerate it. He only reminded the Heavenly Wolf King in private not to go overboard, who knew that the Heavenly Wolf King was so arrogant that he did not take the Domain Lord seriously at all and continued to do things his own way. In the past 2,000 years, the Heavenly Wolf King's methods had become more and more overbearing and ferocious, causing the various empires in the Tianren domain to complain. The Tianren domain lord also became enemies with him many times and gradually became enemies. In the end, the Tianren domain lord could not take it anymore and took action 10 years ago. He gathered a large number of troops and used all the power of the Tianren domain. He also invited the help of 2 domain lords to join forces and annihilate the Heavenly Wolf King's forces. More than half of the elites under the Heavenly Wolf King were killed and the rest surrendered. Even his right-hand men had been killed by the domain lord of benevolence in order to cover his escape. Since then, the severely injured Heavenly Wolf King had disappeared without a trace. Everyone thought that he must have fled to a faraway region or even to other continents. Unexpectedly, he actually came to the Green Lotus region. Lu Ming was very clear about the Heavenly Wolf King's deeds and his enmity with the Tianren domain lord. Although he could not finish talking about the Heavenly Wolf King's life history, even if he talked for 3 days and 3 nights. However, Lu Ming made it short. In just a moment, Ji Tianxing understood the Heavenly Wolf King's identity and situation. Peng Fei nodded repeatedly to express his agreement. Yes, Martial Uncle is right. The Heavenly Wolf King is a notorious butcher and demon. Not only do the people of the Tianren domain hate him, but even the people of the Green Lotus region fear him when they hear of his evil name. Lu Ming suddenly thought of a problem and frowned. Peng Fei, I didn't even know that the Heavenly Wolf King had appeared. How did you know? Peng Fei smiled and scratched his head. Of course it's master. Impossible. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Lu Ming flatly denied and said in a firm tone, If your master knew of this news, he would definitely inform me immediately. After all, one of the 2 domain lords who helped the Tianren domain lord eliminate the Heavenly Wolf King was me. Peng Fei was embarrassed and smiled. Martial Uncle, haven't I left Mount Wuhua these 2 years and been wandering around outside? As you know, I like to wander around, gather information, and do some business. Ji Tianxing immediately revealed a smile, nodded and said, Yes, this kid wanted to sell me a piece of information in the Rainpool City and cheated me of 20 million. Lu Ming frowned fiercely. He looked at Peng Fei with a sharp gaze and reprimanded. You're really daring. You dare to lie to anyone. Fortunately, you met Brother Long this time. If it were any other divine king, you wouldn't even know when you'd lose your little life. Peng Fei was even more embarrassed and said with an embarrassed smile, Martial Uncle, I'm doing business properly. How can it be called cheating? Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hand. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's talk about the Heavenly Wolf King. Lu Ming nodded slightly and said seriously, If the clues provided by Peng Fei are accurate, then we can basically confirm that the real culprit should be the Heavenly Wolf King. Other divine king powerhouses could not do this sort of thing, but the Heavenly Wolf King would not shrink from committing all sorts of atrocities. He could absolutely do it. The problem now is, where do we go to find the Heavenly Wolf King? Ji Tianxing said calmly, As long as we know who the real culprit is, it'll be easy to find him with a target. Although the Heavenly Wolf King has already left for several days, nobody dares to guarantee whether he's still hiding in the imperial capital. Let's start searching from the imperial capital first. Lu Ming agreed. Peng Fei had no objections to. Hence, the first step of the plan was decided like this. On the other side, the unconscious state preceptor gradually woke up. Tian Myriad Emperor was long dumbfounded, although he was very indignant and hated Ji Tianxing to the core. But just now, when he heard Ji Tianxing, Lu Ming, and Peng Fei's conversation, he understood what was going on. Although he was somewhat in disbelief, he did not have the right to speak and could only carry out Lu Ming's orders. Very soon, Tian Myriad Emperor sent out thousands of imperial guards under Lu Ming's instructions to search for traces of the Heavenly Wolf King all over the imperial capital. Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming also split up, casting mystic arts and searching a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. However, the search operation lasted for 6 hours and ended in failure. Not only did the imperial guards find nothing, But Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming also did not detect the aura of the Heavenly Wolf King. Both of them returned to the Cloud Palace and met to discuss the next step of the plan. At present, it seems that the Heavenly Wolf King has already left the imperial capital and fled elsewhere. Then where are we going to find him next? That guy is now a wandering ghost. His whereabouts are mysterious and unpredictable. These few days are enough for him to leave the Green Lotus region and flee to other regions. If that's the case, then it's like looking for a needle in a haystack for us to find him. Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming had a discussion, and both of them looked gloomy. Just as they had found the key clue and confirmed the culprit, they did not expect the clue to be cut off again. Just as both of them were at their wits' end, Peng Fei suddenly said, "Martial Uncle, Senior Long Tian, do you think the Heavenly Wolf King might have gone to the benevolent region?" Upon hearing this, Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming were stunned for a moment before they shook their heads. 10 years ago, he was seriously injured and finally escaped from the benevolent region. How could he possibly go back? Unless he's crazy. The benevolent region, Lord has a deep grudge with him. He will definitely go back to take revenge, but not now. In just 10 years, even if he had a fortuitous encounter, it's impossible for his realm to skyrocket. Both of their words made sense, but Peng Fei still insisted on his opinion and analyzed, "Although my idea is indeed a little ridiculous and unrealistic, I feel that given the Heavenly Wolf King's character, he might really do such a thing. The most important reason is that there's a divine dragon mystic realm in the benevolent region. If the Heavenly Wolf King wants to take revenge, he has to quickly increase his strength or find a fortuitous encounter. Isn't that divine dragon mystic realm an opportunity for him?" Lu Ming thought about it seriously and nodded. That makes sense. That Heavenly Wolf King has never been someone who follows the rules. He doesn't play by the rules either. Even if it's risky for him to return to the benevolent region, as long as the temptation is big enough, he might still take the risk. Ji Tianxing also nodded and said, "Judging from the Heavenly Wolf King's style of doing things, he's not only cruel and ruthless, but also very sinister and cunning. Before he has enough strength to take revenge, he will definitely not expose his identity, much less let the benevolent region lord know. Even if he returns to the benevolent region, he will try to conceal and disguise himself. We still have to pay attention to distinguish." Lu Ming thought for a moment and made a decision. "All right, then let's go to the benevolent region and make a trip to the divine dragon mystic realm." Peng Fei, of course, raised both hands in agreement. He said with anticipation, "Yes. In this way, even if we don't find the Heavenly Wolf King, we won't return empty-handed and make a wasted trip." Chapter 3590. The second step of the plan was decided just like that. Tian Xiang and the state preceptor watched from the side, not even qualified to interrupt. Seeing that things were developing in a direction they could not understand, both of them had strange expressions, wanting to say something but hesitating. But Lu Ming did not give them a chance to speak. After giving a few instructions, he left with Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei. "Xiang Jioga, I'll head to the Tianren region now to capture the real culprit personally. You stay in the capital and wait for news. As for the state preceptor, although he's not the real culprit, he is an accomplice. You have to watch him closely." With that, Lu Ming's divine ship carried Ji Tianxing and Peng Fei out of the capital at lightning speed, disappearing into the horizon very quickly. Only the Emperor of Tian Xiang and the state preceptor were left. Both of them looked at each other speechlessly. After a long silence, the Emperor of Tian Xiang said in a complicated tone, "State preceptor, tell me the truth. Did you kill Xiangyu?" "This." The state preceptor's body stiffened, his expression becoming very awkward. He hurriedly denied it. "Your Majesty, how can you believe them?" But before he could finish, the Emperor of Tian Xiang shouted angrily, "Shut up. The truth has already surfaced. Are you still going to put on an act with me? If you tell me the truth, I can still be lenient. But if you continue to evade, I can only—" There was no need to say the latter part. Everyone was well aware of it. The state preceptor's body trembled, and he closed his eyes in pain. He said in a mournful tone, "Your Majesty, what they said is all true. The one who killed the little princess was indeed me. But I didn't know about this matter, and it was definitely not my intention. Including the memories of those few days, I have a blank slate. The Emperor of Tianxiang originally believed Ji Tianxing's judgment. After getting the state preceptor's confirmation, he no longer had any doubts. His heart was heavy, and he said in a low voice with a mournful expression, "Celestial Wolf King, Celestial Wolf King, you're a high and mighty middle-level god king, an existence comparable to a region master. Why would you do such a deranged thing? Why would you kill a divine Lord Realm Girl? What kind of sin did my Tianxiang kingdom commit to attract such a murderous god?" The imperial preceptor was startled for a moment before he hurriedly replied, "Your Majesty, this matter is all Long Tian's fault. Although the little princess was not killed by him, she died because of him. It was definitely his appearance that had attracted the heavenly Wolf King. After all, he was the godly monarch of the dragon race. If the celestial Wolf King possessed him or refined him, he would soar to the heavens. The king-grade god artifact that he gave to the little princess was the main reason why the heavenly Wolf King tried to kill him." Tianxiang's emperor furrowed his brows and said through gritted teeth, "That makes sense. Originally, we thought that we had wronged him, but now it seems that we were right to hate him. He was a jinx. He's the one who killed Xiangyu. That's not right." Halfway through his words, Emperor Tian Myriad suddenly realized a problem. Imperial Preceptor, when the heavenly wolf demon king came to the capital to possess you, Long Tian hadn't appeared yet. The state preceptor's face stiffened, and he was dumbfounded once again. Emperor Tian Myriad's face darkened again. After a long silence, he said in a low voice, "State Preceptor, you'll stay in the Celestial Pagoda from now on. Without my permission, you're not allowed to take half a step out." The state preceptor understood what this meant, but he was powerless to refute. He could only acknowledge the order and leave with a gloomy expression. The divine cruiser sped through the sea of clouds, heading straight for the benevolent region. Inside the divine cruiser, Ji Tianxing, Lu Ming, and Peng Fei each had a secret room to recuperate. However, Lu Ming had been focused on steering the divine cruiser. Peng Fei, on the other hand, pestered Ji Tianxing, constantly asking questions and trying to worm his way into being friends. "Senior Long Tian, how did you get to know my martial uncle?" Ji Tianxing sat on the old-fashioned wooden armchair and closed his eyes to rest. His tone was calm as he replied, 1,000 years ago, at a godly monarch exchange in the Xingyuan continent, I heard from my martial uncle that you were once a peerless genius whose name spread all over the world and crushed countless geniuses. Not only the Xingyuan continent, but even the 5 continents of the Dragon Realm are praising your deeds. It's not that exaggerated. It's just hearsay. Sai, don't be so humble. Can you tell me about your deeds back then? For example, your most glorious battle record, your most dangerous experience. You're very interested in the godly monarch's affairs. Yes, I guess so. But aren't your martial uncle and your master godly monarchs? Sai, what's so interesting about their trivial matters? Their lives are ordinary and uneventful. The walls have ears. Your martial uncle is steering the divine cruiser. I didn't say anything just now. Martial uncle won't take issue with me. Forget it, Senior Long Tian. Let's change the topic. Do you think it's possible for us to obtain the Dragon Ball in this trip to the Divine Dragon Mystic Realm? Or the legacy of the Divine Dragon? Then, will the Divine Dragon in the Mystic Realm be a red dragon, a golden dragon, a black dragon, or an azure dragon? Peng Fei's tone was a little excited. Obviously, he was very agitated. Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "None of us have been to that mystic realm. Who can predict the future? Also, don't be too optimistic. There are at least 8,000, if not 10,000 mystic realms like this in the Dragon Realm. Most of them are just rumors. In reality, there isn't even a single dragon scale." Peng Fei immediately became listless, but he was only depressed for a while. He became lively again and activated his chatterbox mode. "Senior Long Tian, may I ask, what kind of dragon are you? I heard that the red dragon's personality is explosive, the golden dragon is noble, the black dragon is gloomy and overbearing, and the azure dragon is kind and amiable. Based on your personality, you should be a golden dragon, right? Ji Tianqing chose to remain silent and ignored him. Peng Fei was not embarrassed at all. He asked shamelessly, "Senior Long Tian, when the time is right, can you reveal your true form and let me see the grace of a divine dragon? I haven't seen a divine dragon with my own eyes in all my life." Seeing that Ji Tianqing was still silent, he added, "You see, I revealed my true form as a great rock before and was your mount. As long as you reveal your true form a little and let me broaden my horizons, I am willing to be your mount for a month." Seeing that Peng Fei was chattering and not giving up, Ji Tianqing was completely helpless. He opened his eyes again and said earnestly, "Peng Fei, you are a pure-blooded, golden-winged great rock. Among the 7 ancestors of the demon race, your status is second only to the Kuan race. Can you be calm and steady? Don't embarrass the rock race, okay?" Peng Fei's spirit was instantly dispirited. He was embarrassed and helpless. He laughed bitterly at himself and said, Not only do they say so, even you think so too? Forget it. I am the most useless and embarrassing golden rock anyway." After he finished speaking, he bowed towards Ji Tianqing and said calmly, "Senior Long Tian, I have offended you just now. Please rest. I will not disturb you any longer. I will take my leave now." Looking at his lonely back as he turned and left, Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and revealed a thoughtful expression. Chapter 3591. Peng Fei, who was originally very talkative, became silent after being dealt a blow by Ji Tianqing. At least, he looked more normal now, even a little dignified and serious. Ji Tianqing was happy to have some peace and quiet. He was quite satisfied with this result. 2 days later, the divine warship finally arrived at the Mirage Sea Forest of the Tianren region. Lu Ming was more well-informed than Peng Fei. Peng Fei only knew the approximate location of the divine dragon mystic realm, but Lu Ming had already found out that the mystic realm was deep in the Mirage Sea Forest. This place was very desolate. It was a primitive forest with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. There were high mountains and dangerous peaks everywhere. In the vast forest, there were countless birds and beasts, including some spirit beasts. In the past, this was a paradise for beasts. However, in recent days, most of the beasts in the forest were so scared that they ran around and hid. This was because elite experts from all over rushed into the Mirage Sea Forest to search for the whereabouts of the divine dragon mystic realm. The divine lord experts moved in groups of more than 10 at the same time, or in groups of 2 or 3 at the same time. Even if a group of beasts encountered them, they could not wait to avoid them. They were terrified and uneasy, afraid that they would be killed and their demon cores taken away. As for the various flying ships and divine warships that flew over the forest from time to time, they were extremely terrifying in the eyes of the beasts. They had to run as far away as possible. A few hours later, the divine warship arrived deep in the Mirage Sea Forest and stopped in the air above a lush forest. At first glance, this forest looked very ordinary. There was nothing special about it. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that this area with a radius of 10,000 miles was exceptionally flourishing, and the divine power of heaven and earth was abnormally rich. Most of the surrounding forests were ancient trees that were 100 feet or hundreds of feet tall. The towering trees in this area were basically more than 1,000 feet tall. In the dense jungle, there were also many flowers and fruit trees, which were full of colorful flowers and fruits. Logically speaking, those divine flowers and fruits were great nourishment. Before they were fully ripe, they would have been snatched away by the beasts. However, in reality, this area was very quiet. There were no beasts at all. Even snakes, ants, mosquitoes, and insects did not dare to come close. Ordinary people would be puzzled. However, powerful experts like Ji Tianqing and Lu Ming could find out the reason. This was because this area was filled with a trace of dragon aura, the aura of a divine dragon. The dragon was the leader of all demons, the most powerful and noble existence. It was a natural deterrent to all demon beasts. No matter how many heaven and earth treasures there were, as long as there was the aura of a dragon, no demonic beast would dare to approach. Swish, swish. Lu Ming put away the divine worship. He, Ji Tianxing, and Peng Fei appeared in the sky above the forest. The three of them looked down at the forest and observed with keen eyes. Lu Ming pointed to a certain place and said, "The big trees, they're all over the place. There are also a few deep pits on the ground, as well as collapsed and broken trees. Obviously, there was a fight there." Peng Fei was full of excitement. He couldn't hold back his anticipation and said, "This is the divine dragon's secret realm? There doesn't seem to be anything special about it. Is the secret realm hidden deep underground?" Ji Tianxing nodded and waved his hand, shooting out a bright golden light into the vast forest. In the blink of an eye, the forest and the earth split apart, revealing a wide ravine. "Let's go down and take a look." He took the lead and stepped into the ravine, flying toward the depths of the ground. Lu Ming and Peng Fei were stunned for a moment and quickly followed. Initially, Lu Ming wanted to remind Ji Tianxing that there were too many treasure hunters gathered here, and they had to be careful. But when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. After all, given his and Ji Tianxing's strength, they could travel unimpeded in the Star Source continent. What was there to be afraid of? Not long later, the three of them passed through thousands of miles of soil and stone and entered the depths of the ground. At this depth, there was basically no soil underground. It was all extremely hard rocks and mineral strata. In the rock strata and mineral strata, holes and cracks could be seen everywhere, even forming huge canyons. The scene here allowed Peng Fei and Lu Ming to see another kind of underground world. The three of them entered a spacious cave with a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks and looked at the corner of the cave. Lu Ming and Peng Fei also stopped and looked in the direction of his gaze. They saw that in the dark cave, the ground and rock walls were emitting red light, shining like thousands of stars. Upon closer look, they realized that they were mixed in the rock strata. The fire attribute divine level, or was of a higher grade, and contained abundant divine power. At the same time, Ji Tianxing could clearly sense that these rock strata and ores had been influenced by dragon power for a long time and contained a faint dragon aura. In the corner of the cave, 4 godlord demons were carefully excavating the rock strata and mining the red ores. When Ji Tianxing, Lu Ming, and Peng Fei looked at them, they also noticed that the three of them had barged in. They immediately pulled out their swords and sabers vigilantly, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming did not think much of it, their expressions calm. However, Peng Fei raised his eyebrows, a look of anticipation in his eyes. He muttered, "Uncle Master, Senior Long Tian, the ores here are of a higher grade and have abundant divine power. If they are mined and refined, they will definitely be valuable gems." What he meant was that he was already tempted. As for the 4 godlords mining the ores, he did not take them seriously at all. Anyway, the ores here were all treasures of heaven and earth and did not have an owner. Even if the godlords arrived first, as long as they were powerful enough, they could still take over the ores. After all, Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming could kill the 4 godlords instantly with a casual move. The heavenly world was a world where strength reigned supreme. The dragon realm was even more so, where the law of the jungle was followed and worshipped to the extreme. In the city and country, there were still moral and legal constraints. Once in such a desolate wilderness, mystic realm treasure land, it would depend on whose fist was bigger. However, Lu Ming's reaction disappointed Peng Fei. He said in a calm tone, "We have another mission on hand. We are not here to explore and search for treasures." A simple sentence extinguished Peng Fei's thoughts of killing the demons and seizing the treasure. "Oh," he could only nod to show that he understood, a look of disappointment flashing in his eyes. Ji Tianxing did not say much. He led the way through the dark cave and continued to fly deeper into the ground. His divine senses spread out, enveloping the rock strata in all directions as he probed the surrounding situation. Within a radius of 40,000 miles, he knew clearly where the godlords were, where the divine stone mines were, and where the dragon's aura was stronger. He could sense that the deeper they went, the stronger the divine dragon's aura was. This proved that this mystic realm was indeed related to the divine dragon, and it was even deeper underground. Soon, Ji Tianxing and the other two left the cave, passing through the cracks and gullies in the rock strata and disappearing into the depths of the darkness. The four godlords of the demon clan secretly heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the three of them leaving. They hurriedly put away their weapons and increased their mining speed, not daring to stop at all. Chapter 3592. For most of the Sir Gods who came to explore, the mystic realm in the depths of the Mirage Sea Forest was full of mystery and danger. But for Ji Tianxing and the other two, this mystic realm was safer. At least, the three of them had not encountered any real danger until they went 30,000 miles underground. Even though they passed through many caves, ravines, and canyons along the way, there were many Sir Gods who were mining mineral veins and divine stones in groups. They were extremely hostile toward them. Some violent and arrogant Sir Gods even attacked them because they had the advantage in numbers. There were even some canyons and caverns that had divine Lord Realm monster beasts entrenched there, launching attacks on them. But these were not considered dangerous. Ji Tianxing did not have to do anything. Lu Ming killed those ignorant Sir Gods and demon beasts in a second with a few moves. Moreover, their goal was to find the Heavenly Wolf King. They were not interested in those valuable mineral veins and gemstones. As such, the three of them went all the way underground without causing much commotion or wasting much time. At 30,000 miles underground, Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks and did not go any deeper. It should be around here. He could clearly sense that the divine dragon aura here was exceptionally rich. Therefore, he deduced that the core of the mystic realm was nearby. Lu Ming nodded. The dragon power here is very rich. If the Heavenly Wolf King came to this mystic realm, he would definitely be active in this area. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. Let's look around, but we have to hide our strength and aura. Try not to alert the enemy. Okay, Lu Ming responded and hurriedly cast the divine power to conceal his aura. Ji Tianxing also hid his divine power aura and became an ordinary person without any divine power fluctuations. Even a middle-level Sir God like Lu Ming could not see through his background, let alone those Sir Gods. He did not feel threatened at all. As for Peng Fei, there was no need to hide his strength and aura at all. The three of them began to release their divine senses and cast their divine powers and secret skills to search and investigate in all directions. About 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing suddenly detected a trace of obscure divine power fluctuation in a canyon 10,000 miles to the left. Even though the ripple of divine power had only flashed by, but he still captured it. Moreover, he could determine that it was the aura of a divine king powerhouse. Follow me. Therefore, he decisively brought Lu Ming and Peng Fei and rushed to the canyon at the fastest speed. It only took the three of them 30 breaths to pass through the solid and thick rock stratum and the dimly lit cave to arrive at the 100-mile-long canyon. The canyon was about 1,000 miles deep, with bare cliffs on both sides. Above the cliff, divine power rolled and surged, flashing with faint 5-colored divine light. 3 indistinct figures were standing on the cliff, overlooking the situation in the canyon. After observing and discussing for a while, they stepped into the canyon as if they were going to search for treasures. Ji Tianxing secretly probed and saw the strength of the 3 figures. The middle-aged demon clan leader was a middle divine king. He was a Fox clan man with a head full of white hair. The other 2 armor-clad Fae were high divine lords. Seeing that the 3 of them were about to enter the canyon, he no longer hesitated. He crossed 100 miles in one step and appeared above the canyon, blocking the path of the 3 of them. Stop right there. Lu Ming and Peng Fei hurriedly followed and stood side by side with Ji Tianxing, staring coldly at the 3 Fae. The 3 Fae were cautious to begin with. Suddenly, They saw Ji Tianxing and the other two blocking their path. They stopped in their tracks, full of wariness, especially the two armored fae. They even took out their divine weapons and surged with divine power, ready to attack at any time. Both parties exchanged glances. The next moment, Lu Ming and the white-haired Fox Clan man were stunned, revealing a stunned expression at the same time. "It's you!" The two of them exclaimed in unison, their expressions becoming strange. Ji Tianxing frowned, vaguely feeling that something was amiss. It seemed that he might have blocked the wrong person. True enough, Lu Ming nodded slightly at the white-haired Fox Clan man and greeted him, asking, "Fox Moon Divine King, why are you here?" The Fox Moon Divine King cupped his hands and bowed, saying, "Greetings, Protectorate Lord Lu Ming. I didn't expect this small mirage sea mystic realm to attract such a distinguished person like Protectorate Lord Lu." Ji Tianxing did not say anything and cast an inquiring look at Lu Ming. Lu Ming hurriedly introduced, "Brother Long, this is the Fox Moon Divine King, the Deputy Protectorate Lord of the Tianren region." Ji Tianxing then came to a realization, a look of embarrassment flashing in his eyes. Obviously, he had made a mistake. Next, Lu Ming introduced Ji Tianxing to the Fox Moon Divine King. Since both parties knew each other and Lu Ming and the Fox Moon Divine King were on good terms, both parties let down their guard and began a chat. The Fox Moon Divine King explained to Lu Ming, since the battle 10 years ago, the Protectorate Lord was injured and has been in seclusion. I have been presiding over the affairs of the Tianren region all these years. The discovery of the mystic realm in the Mirage Sea Forest this time seems to be related to the Divine Dragon. I have nothing to do, so I came to take a look at the situation and try my luck at the same time. Even a middle-level, 4th-degree Divine King, like him, was interested in the Divine Dragon mystic realm. If he could obtain the legacy of a Divine Dragon of the Divine King realm or related treasures, it would be greatly beneficial. After saying that, the Fox Moon Divine King asked Lu Ming again, "Protectorate Lord Lu, you and Brother Long are not also here for the legacy of the Divine Dragon in the mystic realm, right?" Lu Ming hurriedly waved his hands and explained, "Fox Moon Divine King, you must be joking. Whether there is the legacy of the Divine Dragon in the mystic realm is something unknown. We don't have the leisure to do so. To be honest, we came to the Mirage Sea Forest this time to hunt down the Heavenly Wolf King." "What?" Suddenly hearing the 3 words, Heavenly Wolf King, the Fox Moon Divine King's expression changed drastically. His pupils constricted and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He was full of shock and revealed an expression of disbelief. He lowered his voice and asked, "Protectorate Lord Lu, this is not a joke. Are you sure the Heavenly Wolf King has appeared? Furthermore, why would the Heavenly Wolf King dare to return to the benevolent region and even dare to come to the Mirage Sea Forest?" Lu Ming's expression was solemn as he said in a solemn tone, "Fox Moon Divine King, this seat is not joking with you. This is a long story. Please allow this seat to slowly explain." Following that, he briefly explained the cause and process of the matter to the Fox Moon Divine King. After the Fox Moon Divine King finished listening, his expression immediately turned grave and he frowned. "I see. I didn't expect that the Heavenly Wolf King recovered from his injuries so quickly. He really doesn't change his nature. This time, he appeared and started to harm the common people again. Protectorate Lord Lu, the Heavenly Wolf King is our common enemy. Since you guys are here to capture him, then count this king in 2. Lu Ming naturally agreed and hurriedly nodded and said, "That's great. Let's act separately and exchange information. Not only can we look after each other, it's also easy to find him." The Fox Moon Divine King expressed his agreement, but sighed somewhat regretfully. It's a pity that His Excellency the Protectorate Lord is in close seclusion to recuperate. Otherwise, this king will definitely report this matter. His greatest regret is that he let the Heavenly Wolf King escape back then and was not able to kill him. Chapter 3593. It was impossible for the Benevolence Domain Lord to come. However, the addition of the Fox Moon Divine King was also good news for Lu Ming. After discussing the plan, the two of them began to split up. The Fox Moon Divine King and two guards stepped into the canyon where divine power surged. While searching for treasures, they were also searching for traces of the Heavenly Wolf King. Lu Ming, Ji Tianxing, and Peng Fei continued to search ahead, using their divine senses to explore the various caves and canyons. During this period, the three of them also discovered a few caves that contained a large number of divine stones. In fact, there was even a vein that was dozens of miles long hidden in one of the deep canyons. The value of these cultivation resources was not low. They added up to a large sum of wealth. However, Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming did not care. They only focused on releasing their divine senses to search for traces of the Heavenly Wolf King. However, after Peng Fei saw these divine stones and mineral veins, he could no longer move. He was very tempted. After apologizing to Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming, he began to collect those divine stones and try to excavate the mineral vein in the canyon. Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming both expressed their opposition and tried to persuade Peng Fei. However, Peng Fei was insistent on excavating the divine stones and mineral veins. The two of them could not persuade him otherwise. Helpless, the two of them could only let Peng Fei collect the divine stones and mineral veins. The two of them continued to release their divine senses and use their divine powers and secret skills to search for the whereabouts of the Heavenly Wolf King. Peng Fei was very busy. In his eyes, there were only the priceless divine stones and mineral veins. Even as Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming walked further and further away, Peng Fei did not notice. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming separately searched a radius of 50,000 miles, but they did not find anything. Not to mention the Heavenly Wolf King, they did not even meet a divine king. Those divine lord explorers did find a dozen of them, but the two of them could not be bothered. The two of them were helpless. They could only return to the agreed cave to discuss countermeasures. At this moment, the two of them sensed at the same time that there was a strong divine power fluctuation 20,000 miles in front of them. Immediately after, accompanied by waves of divine power fluctuations, there was a loud, dull sound. Clearly, in that region 20,000 miles away, not only did divine king powerhouses appear, a great battle even occurred. Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming glanced at each other. They quickly stopped their discussion and rushed toward that area. Swish! Both of them were as fast as light, passing through layers of caves, canyons, and cliffs. In a short span of 20 breaths, the two of them had traveled 20,000 miles underground and arrived at the scene of the incident. This was a huge abyss. On the left was a precipitous cliff that stretched for more than 200 miles. On the right was a dark and gloomy abyss, which was protected by a huge five-colored light barrier. It was bottomless. The five-colored light barrier was uniform and thick, and its defensive power was very strong. It shone with dazzling five-colored divine light, dispelling the nearby darkness. Even so, the five-colored light failed to illuminate the abyss. Ji Tianxing's and Lu Ming's divine senses were blocked by the colorful light shield, and they were unable to investigate the situation in the abyss. As for the source of the ripples of divine power and the loud noise, it was on the cliff to the left of the abyss. There were two groups of powerhouses, a total of 5 people, and they were fighting. On one side, there were 3 people. They were Fox Moon Divine King and 2 armored guards. On the other side, there were 2 demon-race divine kings who were well-dressed and had a dignified aura. The stronger divine king wore a fiery red robe and had antennae on his head. It was hard to tell what race he was from. The other divine king was a burly man from the divine tiger race with a dignified face. Although Fox Moon Divine King's side had the advantage of numbers, they were obviously not their match. However, they were clearly not a match for the 2 demon-race god kings. They were beaten back repeatedly, riddled with wounds. The ordinary-looking red-robed divine king was entangled with Fox Moon Divine King and completely suppressed him. It was obvious that he was stronger. No matter how Fox Moon Divine King unleashed his full strength and used all kinds of divine abilities, he could not defeat the red-robed Divine King. Instead, he was in danger and could be severely injured at any time. As for the burly and dignified Tiger Race Divine King, he was attacking the two guards of Fox Moon Divine King fiercely. How could two high-level Divine Lord Realm guards possibly withstand the attacks of middle-level Divine Kings? In a short moment, the two guards had their armors torn apart and their divine weapons defeated. Their bodies also became riddled with wounds, dripping with blood. Lu Ming was rather surprised and exclaimed softly, "Wasn't Fox Moon Divine King searching for the Celestial Wolf King? Why did he fight with those two Divine Kings? Among those two Divine Kings, there's no Celestial Wolf King either. And here, there's actually a defensive Grand Array." Ji Qianxing's tone was calm as he said, "This light screen is a Grand Array that formed naturally after 10,000 years. The dragon aura here is very strong, rich to the extreme. If there are no accidents, this abyss under our feet should be the core of the mystic realm." Lu Ming pondered for a while and immediately came to a realization. He said, "It must be Fox Moon Divine King who found this place," thinking that he could find the treasure in the mystic realm right away. In the end, those two Divine Kings also found this place. Both parties fought over the treasure in the abyss. That's why they fought. Fox Moon Divine King did not inform us. Firstly, this matter has nothing to do with the Celestial Wolf King. Secondly, he wants to hog the treasure alone and is not willing to let us get a share. Regarding Lu Ming's guess, Ji Qianxing did not answer. His attention was on the two demon race godly monarchs. He vaguely sensed that there seemed to be something amiss with that red-robed Divine King. Hence, he secretly cast the divine pupil mystic art and carefully observed that red-robed Divine King. At this time, the situation in the field changed again. Just as Ji Qianxing and Lu Ming were observing the battle for a few breaths, Fox Moon Divine King's two guards were torn to pieces by the Tiger Race Divine King, their divine bodies collapsing on the spot. The two guards' divine personas escaped in a panic from the sky full of blood and fragments, flying into the distance. But that Tiger Race Divine King was long prepared. He brazenly brandished his palm and hacked out two streaks of golden light sharp blades, chopping towards the two guards' divine personas. It looked like the two guards' divine personas could not escape in time and were about to be hacked into pieces immediately. Right at this critical juncture, Lu Ming finally made his move. Swoosh! Swoosh! He brandished both his fists and struck out two huge, dark golden fist gleams, slamming hard against the golden light sharp blades. There was a crisp cracking sound, and the two streaks of golden light sharp blades were smashed into pieces at the same time. The two guards' divine personas were finally out of danger. They did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly fled to the edge of the abyss, burrowing into the cracks in the rock walls and escaping without a trace. At this time, the two demon race Divine Kings discovered Lu Ming's arrival and instantly looked as though they were facing a formidable enemy. Both of them revealed intense vigilance, especially that red-robed Divine King. After seeing Lu Ming's appearance clearly, his pupils constricted and intense hatred flashed in his eyes. Lu Ming was conversing with the Fox Moon Divine King, inquiring about the reason for the battle between both parties. He did not notice the subtle expression of the red-robed Divine King. But Ji Qianxing had been observing the red-robed Divine King and of course caught this subtle change. Coupled with the results of his observation, he immediately made a judgment and shouted coldly, "Lu Ming, that guy is in disguise. He should be the Celestial Wolf King." Chapter 3594. What? Hearing Ji Qianxing's cold shout, Lu Ming was not the only one stunned. Even the Fox Moon Divine King was stunned on the spot, her face full of astonishment. Both of them did not expect Ji Qianxing to make such a judgment. At the same time, the red-robed Divine King's expression changed drastically. He glared at Ji Qianxing with a heart full of hatred and turned to fly away without hesitation, wanting to escape the abyss. After all, his disguise was exposed and his identity was exposed. Moreover, he only had the Tiger Divine King as his helper. The Fox Moon Divine King, Lu Ming, and Ji Tianxing, there were three Divine King powerhouses. The Red Robe Divine King was very cautious and vigilant. Once he saw that the situation was not good, he fled decisively. However, his plan was destined to fail. Swoosh! With a flash of divine light, Ji Tianxing teleported 100 miles and blocked the Red Robe Divine King's path. Lu Ming did not care about the Tiger Divine King and hurried over, blocking the Red Robe Divine King's back. As such, the Red Robe Divine King was surrounded from the front and back, unable to escape at all. His expression was as cold as ice, his eyes as sharp as a sword as he glared at Ji Tianxing, his body exuding a biting, cold, murderous intent. However, he remained silent in case he revealed any flaws. Lu Ming was still in disbelief as he asked Ji Tianxing, "Brother Long, you said that this guy is the Celestial Wolf King in disguise." "Of course." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a certain tone, "I observed carefully just now." Even though he unleashed all his strength, he still held back. That's because he wanted to retain a portion of his divine power to maintain a disguise of changing his appearance. However, no matter how he changed his appearance and concealed his divine power aura, he could not change his divine soul. I observed his divine soul and can tell that he is a dark silver celestial wolf. Also, the changes in his eyes and expression show that he knows the Fox Moon Divine King and you. Especially you. He has great hatred and fear. Ji Tianxing's analysis was clear and thorough. Lu Ming and the Fox Moon Divine King heard it clearly. The two of them came to a sudden realization and immediately believed Ji Tianxing's judgment. As for the Red Robe God King, he was filled with shock and disbelief. He looked at Ji Tianxing in great fear and asked, "Who are you?" Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile as he said, "Who I am is not important. The key is that we know who you are." Lu Ming and Fox Moon Divine King stared at the Red Robe Divine King and sneered. "Celestial Wolf King, stop pretending. Reveal your true form. Heavenly Wolf King, we've already seen through your disguise. Is there a need for you to continue pretending?" The red-robed God King's expression was rather ugly. He stared at Ji Tianxing with a face full of resentment. He gritted his teeth and coldly shouted, "Little bastard, you win." As he spoke, his body lit up with dark silver starlight, and his body began to transform. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a middle-aged demon who was more than 10 feet tall. His body did not look burly and muscular, but it was abnormally tough and contained terrifying explosive power. His cheeks were thin and his chin was slightly sharp. There was a pair of dark green pupils in his eyes that flickered with a frightening cold light. The ears on both sides of his temples were pointed and stood up high. It was clearly a pair of wolf ears. Without a doubt, this was the true form of the Celestial Wolf King. Lu Ming and Fox Moon Divine King stared at him, their pupils constricting as a sinister sneer appeared on their faces. "Celestial Wolf King, it's really you. Brother Long really has a discerning eye. You saw through the Celestial Wolf King's disguise with one look." At this very moment, Lu Ming was even more fearful and in awe of Ji Tianxing's strength and means. After all, he and Fox Moon Divine King were very familiar with the Celestial Wolf King, but they did not see through any clues. And Ji Tianxing had never seen the Celestial Wolf King before, but he could see through the Celestial Wolf King's disguise in such a short time. Such strength and means were simply astonishing. Since he had revealed his true form, the Celestial Wolf King no longer put on an act and immediately revealed his true form. He glared at Lu Ming and Fox Moon Divine King with a venomous gaze. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "You two damn bastards! Back then, if you did not side with the evildoers and help Cheating deal with this king, how could this king lose to him? Everything that happened that day, this king remembers it well and will not forget it for a moment. This king once swore that one day, this king will definitely turn all of you into ashes. Since you delivered yourselves to my doorstep today, this king will send you on your way." As he said that, the celestial wolf king's body lit up with a resplendent silver light, emitting an earth-shattering murderous aura. Not far away, the tiger race divine king also realized that things were troublesome. They had met an extremely powerful opponent today. His expression was solemn, and his eyes were grave. He silently took out a scarlet battle axe and held it tightly in his hands. Now, he was holding a battle axe and a spear in both hands. His aura was even more powerful. When the tiger race divine king took out the battle axe, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned, his gaze fixed on the scarlet battle axe. Immediately, his brows relaxed, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Looks like my deduction was right. It was indeed the celestial wolf king who possessed the state preceptor and stole that battle axe. Lu Ming was about to fight with the celestial wolf king when he suddenly heard this. His gaze also landed on the scarlet battle axe. At the same time, the tiger race divine king was stunned, revealing a puzzled expression. The celestial wolf king revealed a stunned expression, his eyes widening in disbelief. He looked at Ji Tianxing and said, "It's you. Could it be that you came here not by coincidence, but to investigate that matter?" Clearly, the celestial wolf king had finally recognized Ji Tianxing. It was that dragon race youth who appeared in Tianxiang capital and caused a commotion in the city. Ji Tianxing sneered and said, "Celestial wolf king, you admit that you possessed the state preceptor and stole the battle axe. You also killed Xiang Yu?" As he said that, he held an image recording crystal in his left hand and recorded this scene. The celestial wolf king grinned coldly and said, I thought that I did things secretly and secretly. I didn't expect that you would still see through me, but you clearly left Tianxiang capital. Why are you still investigating this matter?" Ji Tianxing did not answer his question. Instead, he continued asking, "It's good that you admit to that matter. However, I still want to ask you one more thing. How did that battle axe end up in his hands?" After saying that, he pointed at the dazed tiger race divine king. Clearly, the tiger race divine king did not know that the scarlet battle axe in his hands had such a complicated origin. The celestial wolf king narrowed his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing with a dark gaze. He said, "Kid, I really didn't expect you to be so capable. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have hesitated in Tianxiang capital back then. I should have killed you halfway back then and refined you." Ji Tianxing pondered for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. He analyzed and said, "Before I appeared in Tianxiang capital, you had already possessed the state preceptor. Perhaps you had other plans previously. However, after I appeared, you wanted to kill me and refine my dragon race bloodline to become a noble dragon race member. However, you didn't have the confidence to kill me. You were also afraid that things would blow up and your identity would be exposed. You would then be hunted down by Lu Ming and the Tianren domain lord. Later on, you went to look for Xiang Yu and accidentally found her unconscious on the ground. The battle axe was placed on the table, so you stole it. You were afraid that Xiang Yu would be exposed when she woke up, so you killed her." Chapter 3595. Haha, I've really underestimated you. You're not bad. Your analysis is clear and logical, as if you've seen it with your own eyes. The heavenly wolf king stared sharply at Ji Tianxing, his tone revealing a piercing, murderous intent. His words undoubtedly proved that Ji Tianxing's conjecture was correct. Lu Ming secretly heaved a sigh of relief and gave Ji Tianxing a thumbs up in his heart. He recalled how he felt when Ji Tianxing raised this conjecture in the capital that day. He was very thankful that he had hesitated a little and chose to believe Ji Tianxing and accompany him to investigate the truth. If not, it would have become an unjust case and the truth would not have come alight today. Lu Ming thought to himself, his abilities, methods, and intelligence are still the same as before. No, he's even more outstanding than before. Is the current him really a fallen genius? Lu Ming began to have doubts and even overturned his previous understanding. At this moment, Ji Tianxing put away the photographic crystal and sneered at the Heavenly Wolf King. "Heavenly Wolf King, although you're very sinister and despicable, you still have some backbone and dare to admit that you did all this. The Heavenly Wolf King was about to speak. At this moment, the Tiger Tribe's divine king finally asked the question in his heart after holding it in for a long time. He waved the crimson battle axe in his hand and questioned the Heavenly Wolf King. Heavenly Wolf King, didn't you tell me that this battle axe was personally refined by you? You even swore that you had mastered an extremely profound crafting technique. Not only can you refine inferior grade and middle grade king grade divine weapons, but you can even refine a superior grade king grade divine weapon? The Heavenly Wolf King was instantly embarrassed and stammered, unable to speak. The Tiger Tribe's divine king continued to ask, Heavenly Wolf King, I believe you and treat you as a brother. How can you deceive me like this? It's just a mere inferior grade, king grade battle axe. Although it's priceless, it's not enough to move me. I'm only willing to become sworn brothers with you on account of your sincerity and want to roam the world with you. I didn't expect that even this battle axe was stolen. The Tiger Tribe, godly monarch, realized that he had been tricked, and he angrily questioned the Heavenly Wolf Monarch. The Heavenly Wolf King sensed that something was amiss and hurriedly changed the topic. Golden Tiger King, now is not the time to talk about this. I will explain it to you later. Now, these bastards want to take our lives. How can you believe their words? In fact, the Heavenly Wolf King and the Golden Tiger King had only known each other for a short while. The Golden Tiger King came from another region and lived in the northernmost part of the astral source continent. He did not understand the situation here. He knew nothing about Welkin Wolf King's past. On the other hand, the Heavenly Wolf King was an expert in acting and deceiving. He had successfully swindled the Golden Tiger King's trust. At the same time, he gave the Golden Tiger King the crimson battle axe he had stolen as a gift. The Golden Tiger King became hot-headed and swore to become sworn brothers with him. They swore that they would roam the world together and conquer the world together. However, the two of them were considered to have died before achieving victory. After becoming sworn brothers, the first great undertaking that the two of them worked together was to explore the divine dragon's secret realm. Obviously, it was destined to end in tragedy. Lu Ming saw the animosity between the Heavenly Wolf King and the Golden Tiger King, and he suddenly had an idea. He sneered and said, Golden Tiger King, you are definitely not from around here. Ha! If you had heard about the Heavenly Wolf King's reputation in the Tianren domain, you would not have been deceived by him. He is a well-known bastard and demon. He is sinister, despicable, cunning, and cruel. He has already reached the stage where he can stop children from crying at night. Listen to my advice and leave this place immediately. Don't be deceived and used by him again. The Heavenly Wolf King was anxious. He glared at Lu Ming with resentment and hurriedly persuaded the Golden Tiger King. Golden Tiger King, don't listen to this bastard's nonsense. He has a deep hatred for me. Of course, he will deliberately slander me. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, the Golden Tiger King waved his hand and said in a serious tone, Heavenly Wolf King, you don't have to worry. I am not the kind of person who will sail according to the wind. Although you have deceived me, I do believe the words of this protectorate Lord Lu. But this king will never run away from the battle or even change sides at the last minute. That would be treacherous and despicable. The Golden Tiger King's honesty made the Heavenly Wolf King heave a sigh of relief. Lu Ming had failed to sow discord and was slightly embarrassed. He could only say regretfully, Golden Tiger King, although I admire your loyalty and trustworthiness, don't make a mistake. The Golden Tiger King did not appreciate his kindness. He held the long spear and the battle axe in his hands and roared with a murderous aura, Stop talking nonsense. If you want to fight, let's fight. You are really stubborn. Lu Ming shouted coldly and stopped persuading the Golden Tiger King. He also took out the divine sword and quickly accumulated divine power. He raised it to the peak state and locked on to the Heavenly Wolf King's aura. The Heavenly Wolf King was attacked from both sides, but he was fearless. He sneered malevolently. You want to kill me? Do you think you're worthy? Go to hell. As he roared, he waved his long, pitch-black saber and slashed out a saber gleam that could split heaven and earth. He charged toward Ji Tianxing and Lu Ming. Above the abyss not far away, the Golden Tiger King also roared and waved his long spear and battle axe to attack the Fox Moon Divine King. An earth-shattering battle broke out immediately. The 5 Divine Kings used their special skills and tried to kill each other as quickly as possible. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dazzling 5-color divine light collided violently above the abyss, creating a series of earth-shattering explosions. The earth-shattering explosion created a violent shockwave that swept through everything around the abyss. The naturally formed 5-colored light shield shook violently from the impact and was on the verge of shattering. As for the cliffs and rock walls around the abyss, no matter how hard they were, they could not withstand such a terrifying impact and immediately collapsed, shattering thousands of miles away. The entire abyss was shaking violently. Everything within a 10,000-mile radius was shaking. There were also muffled rumbling sounds that spread underground. Countless pieces of rubble fell from the shattered walls into the abyss and smashed into the 5-colored light shield. Fortunately, this battle only lasted for 10 breaths of time before it ended quickly. If not, the entire abyss would have been destroyed. After more than 10 moves, the Heavenly Wolf King was killed by Ji Tianxing. With a move of the God-slaying sword, he cut the Heavenly Wolf King into 2 and destroyed his divine body. With another move of the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist, he shattered the Heavenly Wolf King's divine spark and killed him on the spot. Originally, Lu Ming could not do anything to the Heavenly Wolf King, even after 12 consecutive moves. He thought that there would be a tough battle today. He would probably have to fight for a few hours and only be able to severely injure the Heavenly Wolf King. If he was not careful, the Heavenly Wolf King might escape and he would have to hunt him down. However, he did not expect Ji Tianxing to kill the Heavenly Wolf King so easily and quickly. As a result, when the Heavenly Wolf King's divine spark was shattered, his face was filled with shock and disbelief. Ji Tianxing did not stop. With a wave of his hand, he put away the Heavenly Wolf King's divine spark fragments and charged toward the Golden Tiger King with his sword.